Hello, what's going on, everybody?
Hey, we're just waiting until a couple more people come in and then we'll start.
Very cool. Let's see.
And I'm not going to be super draconian about the mics, like I've said a couple times, but people keep coming in. Just, try not to like start screaming.
No
Like,
problem.
I don't. Okay, I'm gonna get started. So everybody, welcome to a heartbreaking reading of Staggering Genius. I had this idea a while ago that I was like, I wished I could get everyone that I liked into one room, and it occurred to me that I could. I'm very happy with everyone that managed to show up. There was some people I had to blackmail. Thank you. There were also people that blackmailed me. It happens. So Charles is our moderator. He's ruling with an iron fist. He can do whatever he wants. So try not to make him angry. We're gonna have a couple breaks in between the readings and do a Q&A. So if you're in the chat right now and you want to ask somebody a question, we're gonna sort of like do it in batches. So post in the chat, like either me or Charles will find it and we'll maybe ask it. If nobody asks questions, then I'll have to ask questions, and I don't think anybody wants that.
I think you could ask a few good questions from time to time, Autumn. You're pretty smart. I think it's relatively well known.
I tried to do like a combo of like, I tried to do like some normie questions because I'm like, there's people here that don't know me and I'm not sure they understood what they were signing up for. So we'll feel it out. So first up is one of the newer writers, Alexandrine Ogundimu, and I probably butchered her name, I'm sorry. But her latest novella is called Desperate, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I saw her on Twitter. She seemed like really cool and smart, and I would watch her social media for an announcement. If I say what it is, a man will immediately come and shoot me in the head. So just be on the lookout for
that. I think I know what book you're talking about. I really want to read that. I'm really excited to read that. So that's cool.
Yeah, so everyone welcome Alexandrine.
Hey.
And I will spotlight her.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So without further ado, my name is Alexandrine. I'm going to be reading from Desperate. I'm just going to read a couple of the shorter, earlier chapters. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's cool.
You don't have to know anything. This is chapter 2, so you'll catch along as you go. The why of it was that V had signed up for a Master of Fine Arts and Fiction program in New York. They gave him a full ride, which is the only way that he would have been able to go. And when he'd heard the news, he'd literally fallen to his knees in the shitty Indiana apartment he shared with his ex-girlfriend and started dragging himself around in joy, dick first, screaming like some kind of deranged lunatic so loud that the downstairs neighbor he used to drink with had had to come up and see to make sure that everything was all right. And of course it was. It wasn't just all right, it was perfect. And beyond anything he could have wanted, because this was his way out, his way into New York and out of shitty retail jobs, and he could ascend to heretofore unseen heights. The drinking would have to go if he wanted to have a chance to make it in New York, so he basically stopped altogether and even cut back severely on cigarettes and entered into a bout of anorexia, where he compulsively exercised and barely ate anything that wasn't boiled chicken breasts and green vegetables, because he was so freaked out about being overweight or in any way less than perfect, less than the closest to divinity he'd get to before his transcendence to the heavenly city. And it worked a dream. He lost a whole bunch of weight and had to buy new, cooler clothes, and he no longer stank of liquor and cigarettes constantly, and he finished out his grit working for Walmart, and his parents drove him cross country to his apartment in Chinatown. The move ended in an explosion when he told the father he couldn't talk like that to the mother in his new apartment. The father had always talked to the mother like that, and of course, V hadn't ever said anything about it out of fear of the father's threats of physical violence for noncompliance. He followed through with enough randomness that it was for the best if you complied with everything he said on the off chance threat and hand aligned themselves. But this time there was no recourse for the father to start some shit, because his own rules about men doing what they like in their own homes occluded his ability to make it into a thing. So he just grunted, "Let's go," and the mother left with him, her eyes seemingly pleading for a moment to let her stay there in the tiny 2-bedroom matchbox of an apartment V was about to share with some kid doing a physics PhD, because the luxury of her suburban life in Indiana almost wasn't worth putting up with the physical and emotional battery of the father. Almost. So she left with the father, and V just stood in the place, alone, no idea what he was supposed to do with himself, before slowly starting to unpack his things and bring his life into the new reality. That was all 2 years ago, 2 years before he started hanging one foot out over the tracks, thinking about looking for the exit, back when things were fresh and there was still some verve to tap into. Now it had all gone fallow, and the pleasures of the city had turned to ash, irredeemable, a malicious deity's test of the strength of the human mind through an endless series of practical jokes of the spirit. That first week, he didn't leave the apartment, barely moved, was far too terrified of what could possibly be out there waiting for him to take any kind of initiative and explore and get in trouble. So he spent that time eating leftover beef jerky and yogurt from the trip and lay in his bed, soaking in the murderous heat of the 4th floor walk-up, until he couldn't stand it anymore and dashed out of his apartment and through Chinatown to the Whole Foods on Houston and bought more yogurt and strawberries and oatmeal, barely able to navigate the incredibly crowded and fast-moving blood of humanity. Even the grocery stores in New York were different, packed, rushed, and what was really stupid is that V in his tunnel vision suburban idiocy didn't realize there was a C-town 3 blocks away in the opposite direction of his house, or a Chinese grocery literally just past the end of this block under the bridge. From there, it was a series of halting trips out into the press of the city in the lingering, sweltering heat of the early autumn. One to the landlord, one to the drugstore, a kind of proof of concept run from Delancey to Broadway on the to East Broadway on the subway that now felt so familiar as to be a source of comfort, but at the time was shockingly loud and moved faster than anything V had seen, or at least that's what it felt like. But he still fell in love with it immediately and wanted nothing more than to ride more trains. The father had warned against riding the subway, advised using cabs because he was a suburbanite. The father didn't get that to live in a city was to move through a city, that the motion was the living and not whatever you did when you came to rest, which was just something you probably could have done somewhere else if you'd taken the time to get there. Whereas the motion was what enabled one to do so many of those things at such a rapid pace, and then also to just be anywhere without needing to get in a car and drive, but to just step out with nothing but your wallet and cell phone, knowing you could and would be anywhere, a feeling that cannot be translated when traveling by car. People live at least partially in their cars and therefore carry a bit of their home with them, and therefore are not really going anywhere, but bringing the same place with them to other places and therefore tainting it with the psychic muck of their own likes and dislikes and convenience and desires. In the spirit of infatuation for the subway, he decided to break his fear of moving through the city and go to Coney Island, a convenient straight shot from the nearest F station. And so one afternoon, he put on some shorts and V got on the train and rode it through Brooklyn to the end of the line and immediately got to learn that what borough you were in made an enormous amount of difference, each borough constituting its own city with its own logic, taste, smell, feel, sound, people, because the subway didn't even run underground for most of the trip, but was either zooming through open air below grade stations or else riding elevated tracks, and V was listening to Trap Lord by A$AP Ferg, who was a Harlem-based rapper and therefore had a rhythm that kind of matched the steady pounding in Manhattan, but didn't fit the cut glass psychedelia of Brooklyn. The strangest thing is that yes, the Black people in New York, especially so far in Brooklyn, which was way Blacker and way more Spanish than Manhattan, yes, they were in a different economic bracket and definitely worked way harder than he did, and maybe some of them were packing heat or dangerous in a way he was used to only white people being, poor whites, working class whites, his quote friends he was glad to get away from. But the point was that he wasn't afraid of them the way he was afraid that Black people back in Indiana would see through him and know he was fronting and try and pull his card and want to know where he stayed and all that shit, which they often did. But then everyone fronted in one way or another, not in any kind of severe way, but it was the subway, and you might be the sweetest motherfucker on the planet. You might take your kid to the museum on weekends and tuck her in at night and treat her mother like a queen and lay her down and actually make love and not just fuck. But when you were riding the subway, you and everyone else was ready to pull out a knife and go ham at the slightest sign of any shit going down, because the social contract required everyone on the train to look and maybe even be ready to throw hands over any shit going wrong, which is why only the homeless and insane could get away with anything less than perfect subway etiquette. And that was a lot for V to glean on his second subway ride, but please consider that Coney Island is a long-ass way from Chinatown, and with a little poetic license, you can download the absolute sum knowledge of the entire New York subway system into your cortex during the length of that single ride, especially when you consider what a slice it is, how you're going from Chinese to white to black to Hispanic back to black, and you're doing it all, and all are equal, even though the amount of cash on hand is dropping quickly and the number of cops in the cars goes up considerably. Seriously, even during off hours, there were so many cops, but only in the blackest neighborhoods, and V felt how black he was, because Lord knows the only other thing they'd clock him for in this town was Spanish, which is what they had already started calling Latinx people, and only then because so many of these Dominican and Puerto Rican motherfuckers were mulattoes anyway, so anyone that did call him Spanish was probably a lot closer to the truth than they realized, which was a relief after a lifetime of everyone thinking he was an Arab or an Indian or something. Not that there was anything wrong with being either of those things, but he wasn't either and didn't look it. But the whites in Indiana weren't as good at profiling, unlike the folks in this town who definitely had that shit on lock, judging by the way the cops looked at him. And the point of it was that it was the year after Eric Garner got killed, and he didn't feel like testing the extent of NYPD's colorism, even this far from Staten Island, where they hunted black people for sport and might actually give a shit about skin tone. Whereas if the whole subway car is full of people that look like you, and there's a cop on the train that doesn't look like you, you're going to assume the cop is there to kick your fucking ass. Coney Island itself was fine, a comforting reassurance that shitty things existed in New York as well. What got him in trouble, what made the trip to Coney Island something that would rest in V's thoughts forever and scar itself across his soul, a glitch in his timeline, was that at some point he decided that he wanted a beer. Just a beer, nothing more, nothing too extravagant, but just a beer as he stared out over the water and felt the admittedly pleasant breeze wail off the Atlantic, toxic sure, but not worse than the air coming off the Ohio, which carried with it noxious odors of unknown, multivalent composition and shocking intensity, to the point where it was impossible to get all the way used to that smell. That wasn't what Coney Island smelled like. It was just brine and trash, simple, easy aromas that he could parse and deal with, another small blessing of the city he wished to honor with the modest consumption of one beer. So we found a bar that was open to the air and had a $6 special, and went in and ordered a $6 Budweiser and slowly drank it, savoring the watery mineral taste and mild bitterness of it. Mild bitterness, and it went down so well that he thought there was no harm in ordering another. So he did, and found that one went down even more easily than the other one before. So he ordered a third and figured that ought to be an end of it, which was really quite a shame because the third one went down the easiest, and he thought it was too bad that he couldn't indulge further, but it was clear at this point his tolerance had gone down and he was already drunk. On the platform waiting for the train to take him back home, V learned something else new. He had his first homicidal urge when he realized how easy it would be to simply push one of the random people waiting on the platform onto the tracks. Maybe the mother over there with her 2 brown kids speaking Spanish, maybe this aging punk rocker staring at his phone with the harm's way sticker on the case. Just grab and throw them forward, and maybe just a quick shove from behind, and they'd try to climb back up and grab the third rail somehow, twitching like a puppet as the electricity popped and sang. Or maybe they wouldn't be able to get up at all, and he could just laugh as they lay with a broken ankle, terror in their blood illuminated by the coming lights of the train as it rolled into the station, and they were pulled under the wheels and cut into pieces of meat. Or maybe he could go for the high score and get them right as an express sped through, splattering gore all over the front of the lead car. And maybe they hadn't taken a shit in days, so the feces would spray too, and no one would even notice. They'd think it was just some accident or a fruitcake that didn't want to live anymore. So long and good night to the world. The ride back was illuminating too. Now he was drunk. Seeing the city through drunk eyes was some totally new shit, because being drunk in New York is a magical experience where every little detail takes on enormous beauty. The clank and screech of train wheels, the smell of trash, the way light hits and refracts on and around different types of buildings, the stale air and the rush of new humidity whenever the doors opened, the sense of speeding towards destiny, the general air of supreme blessing that makes, once again, city-based motion something beyond simple traveling. And now you're drunk and it's being rewritten on the fly with a kind of psionic haze, beautiful and awful and wonderful and terrifying. When he got home, he realized he could only get so wet and started thinking about other places he could hop on the subway and go. He remembered that the university gave readings at the KGB bar once a week or once a month, so he decided to go there. Once again, he swept his Metro card and wound up at the bar, which was tiny and red and full of communist propaganda. He squeezed into a spot at the bar and ordered a Baltica 9, an incredibly strong Russian beer, not particularly delicious, but brutally effective. And so he got even more drunk and started taking shots and talking to a couple old punks from Jersey who lived in the city back in their glory days. And they gave him a little handwritten list of some cool spots he could have a drink. And he cheered them and realized that people in New York aren't rude shitwads, but actually cool and good and gregarious. It's just that if you're trying to talk to someone in the grocery store or on the street or on a train well, maybe that isn't the best place for you to be trying to talk to someone. That schmuck has got somewhere to go, and it would behoove you to just let them get there. And besides, don't you have to engage in the perfect sacrament of motion just the same as they do, or are you too good for such a thing? The cohort at NYU was going to go out drinking a couple weeks after the escapade at Coney Island and KGB. He'd spent those couple weeks holed up again, ashamed of what he'd done, fearful of what it meant, already living in the future he'd made for himself, unable to shake the inevitability of being back on the bottle, paying dearly for a night of indiscretion, and had he known the cost, he never would have drank. Because he lacked clairvoyance, he wasn't able to foresee the full scope of what a couple of drinks at a bar could mean for him. All the blood, cum, vomit, shit, the loss of so much cognitive ability, endless humiliations, end of all social capital, a potential exit from his already beloved city and back into a one-room apartment in Indiana, painfully eking out a page at a time and so drunk as to have reality slip. But yet again, there was no way for him to see such a thing, and so he had to satisfy himself with myopia, which was still, to be real, pretty bleak, since the hangover precipitated by the night of debauchery was severe enough to leave him in his bed, rolling around, trying not to be so hot all the goddamn time, while also freezing and puking. And already he would need the hair of the dog to live anything like normal, but he wasn't willing to take that obvious step, not just yet. With all this information, it would have been obvious that the smart thing to do would be to forego the pre-semester drinks and spend the evening in quiet piety and self-reflection, but then he told himself that fatal lie: he wouldn't drink. He would subsist entirely on Diet Coke for the night, and besides, there was no way they could drink as hard as his old pals in Indiana, and so there would not be anything missed, no magic connections lost, or deep night chewing of fat left unattended. He would arrive back at his apartment before midnight and could sleep easily, unperturbed and unbothered by any alcoholic lingerings. The Coney Island thing could be left as just the kind of human undoing that is all too easily righted with sound thought and sober living. With such thoughts forward in his mind, he arrived at the bar, found the crew, and began making introductions. Fast forward to the end of the night, and V's outside 99-cent fresh pizza at 4 a.m., absolutely pissed drunk, working down his first real slices of New York pie, accompanied by a few second-year students all laughing and talking shop, the magical energy of the city well and truly running through the entire moment for all involved, and the invisible boozy connective tissue swallowing the cluster of idiots as they all basked in the naivety of their belief in the inherent purity of the New York minute. We stumbled down the steps and into the train, and everything was warm and safe and beautiful and good. And just one more quick chapter. One time, Avery asked V to go see Skrillex with him in Times Square, and this was instantly suspect, of course, it being 2016 and no one giving a fuck about Skrillex anymore. But V was down because the ticket was free and he would do anything for Avery because he was in love with Avery, even though the feelings were unrequited. Of course, they had to pregame, and so V went up to Avery's place on the Upper West Side and watched him methodically alternate between shots of whiskey and Red Bull. Sorry. His spectacles dangling precariously on the bridge of his nose. V would marvel at how Avery insisted he wasn't gay, even though he lifted the glass to his lips like such a faggot. Sweet red lips and a beautiful, natural, slim, yet gym-built frame. And maybe it wasn't that Avery wasn't gay, just that Avery was way out of his league. And when they got to the subway, they realized they both really wanted a cigarette, and V was willing to wait, but Avery wasn't. So they stood between the cars on a sort of full one train, and each lit a square, laughing in the darkness as the train barreled through the tunnels, their lives an inch from being extinguished because V was in love with Avery and would do anything for him. But then two cops saw them at the next stop and pulled them off and wrote them up citations on the platform just for riding between cars not smoking, because they had thrown the butts out as soon as they glimpsed the boys in blue fly past. And V had a fantasy of pulling the Glock from the holster of the cop looking away from them and using it to blow away first that cop, then the one riding them up, bullets tearing through their heads, splattering the platform with brain matter. And maybe that would endear him further to Avery because Avery was an anarchist with a big Antifa tattoo. And then maybe he could kill some yuppies on their way down to Brooklyn and a few tourists who were going to catch a showing of Phantom and eat at Guy's American Kitchen and Bar, bullets ripping paper skin as real New Yorkers cheered him on, ecstatic at being liberated from the plague of transplants and fascist pigs and bloated Midwesterners, not knowing their liberator was a transplanted Midwesterner himself of Hoosier extraction. But it wouldn't matter because of how elated everyone would be and Avery would bend down and suck his dick while the bullets flew across the platform and took out a couple of commuting tech bros and some Chelsea faggots. Then the cop finished the citation, and V and Avery thanked them, and they went and saw Skrillex, who was actually pretty good live. And then they went to a gay bar and danced, but not too close, and Avery left early and told V that maybe he should find someone in there to fuck him, not in a mean way, but in a friendly suggestion to explore his sexuality, and it was meant with such kindness that it broke V's heart. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening.
Great reading. I love the love letter to the subway, and that's my only interruption. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That place sounds terrible, and I want to go there now.
I was just really happy to hear from Ferg.
If anyone has questions for Alexandrine or any of the other writers, please write them in the chat, or I don't know, send them on Twitter or something.
Slide in my DMs.
Yeah, I know, like, this is like a weird intersection, like not everyone has a Twitch account, so. Okay, so next up we have Farah Smith. I'm gonna spotlight you. So Farah's sort of been like part of the weird fiction genre for like quite a while, but she's been new to me. I read Anonymous. I was extremely impressed. She's like a very like feminine and like sexy Lovecraft, I think, very classical style. She has a collection coming out soon, next month, right?
Yeah.
Or is it called Of One Pure Will? So welcome, Farah.
Cool. Thank you. So what I'll be reading is a piece that I wrote that was published in Breath and Shadow Literary Journal, which is a journal out of Maine that publishes works by disabled authors in all kinds of genres. So the story is called 1,000 Alarming Presentiments of Evil. And it begins with a quote by St. Augustine. "The dead, by their nature, are not able to involve themselves in the affairs of the living." Casalius of Userthal Abbey, 1019 to 1053, was a Cistercian monk who entered the convent of Userthal at the young age of 14 with prodigious knowledge of Christian doctrine that exceeded the perceived limitations of his age. He began writing sermons at the age of 9, after the death of his mother in a mysterious fire, a woman of faith who was purported to have prophetic dreams of the Lord God before the coming of this perilous fate. His extensive writings, the original manuscripts of which may be examined under glass at the Cistercian Preservation Library in Dusseldorf, span from his interpretations of Christian doctrine to alternative and sometimes blasphemous interpretations of the lives of saints. These blasphemies, along with 9 volumes of recorded accounts of devilry, apparitions, and witchcraft in the Südlich-Weinstrasse, alongside accusations of usury and carnality, resulted in his expulsion from the monastery by Abbot Verinius. Despite the attempts of Casalius to tell these stories through exemplums and repair his reputation, the abbot saw his presence as having no value in terms of the moral edification of the people, and rather as causing a quickening gash in the stability of the district's faith and his pronouncements. Casalius died not long after his expulsion at the age of 34 in a land dispute of unknown origin. Included here are selected chapters in translation of his final book of exemplums entitled 1,000 Alarming Presentiments of Evil, an exhaustive tome originally written in both ecclesiastical Latin and Old High German, documenting the concerning supernatural events of the region during his lifetime. Book 9, Chapter 11. In the year 1044, Bishop Martins relayed to me that in the municipality of Herxheimweih, a small village of only 97 people at the time, of that which is written, the villagers had found among them 3 practitioners of devilry forbidden upon God's soil. The 3 wretches poisoned themselves to escape the damnation of their prosecutors. The fine bishop insisted that the corpses be burned to prevent the young and foolish who were enchanted by magic to dismember the body for reliquaries. The bishop did not, however, specify the proper nature of discardment of these ashes, and so they were dumped in a field. Old Mother Huber related to the bishop that the eldest of her cows had wandered out to the fields at dawn and licked up an excess of dust, after which the poor beast went mad and collapsed to its death at her feet after much moaning and despair. Might it be known that each and every shred of dust of the wicked may enrapture the mind in dark designs and the body in death. Book 9, Chapter 12. It should be known among all holy practitioners that unappeased spirits of the dead linger at the margins of the human world. I once attended the funeral of a virginal innocent named Verdine who lived in Herxheimweih. There was some folklore surrounding the girl, and I took leave of Userthal for an eve despite the furrowed brow of Abbot Verenius to make record of the girl's life. I have remained henceforth disturbed by the events I documented from the word of her elder sister Hilma, and continue to struggle with the abbot to exert a safe spiritual harbor for the late Verdine, who undoubtedly faces being unjustly left behind upon the dawn of the resurrection. In the words of Hilma of Herxheimweih, quote, Verdine was indeed the sweet virginal innocent she was believed to be in the village. For a time, Mother and I began to notice dark circles around her eyes and a gripping insomnia that led to poor meal taking and attendance of chores. I took it upon myself to become my sister's keeper, taking on her chores and attending her as she became sicker. As her childlike form took on the hue of death, I sat beside her bed and read her verses. Thinking her to be in a stupor, I stopped. Suddenly she grabbed my wrist and stared into me, urging me to continue on reading and to pinch her so that she may not fall asleep. I pressed her to tell me why, and being on the helm of some great transition, she relented and told me. Verdine had been visited in her dreams by a handsome knight who was known in the village 100 years prior, according to his word. She was enamored with this dream suitor, meeting him in a place where she thought her chastity would be preserved. The dream knight had convinced her that they were in love and that only she could make it possible for them to be together without suffering in the afterlife. The knight showed her his purgatorial bonds. He carried 20 people, 20 corpses on his back, the servants he had killed while they were in his employ. Insisting he was a changed man, he asked Verdine to not only pray for his salvation, but to make upon herself some of his purgatorial suffering in the flesh. Seeing the 20 corpses atop the handsome knight's back and shoulders, formerly hidden by a deceitful angle and curio of clouds, Verdine was frightened and told the knight she needed some time to consider the request. It was then that the knight became furious, and his dream visitations turned to terrors. She must not sleep, she said in a whisper. She must not sleep ever again. Verdine died from exhaustion hours after, her spirit expelled to the unknown as swiftly as she had been born. The entire village attended her funeral, but only I saw my sister's apparition rise up from the pew and float up to the ceiling, phantom hands passing corpse after corpse onto her diaphanous back and shoulders. Book 9, Chapter 19. In Gossafila, bloody rain has been known to fall on occasion, the origins of the hue unknown, save for the direction of the wind that brings such rain, always coming from the south. Upon her return from Oberschlettenbach, Sister Renata relayed to me that the red rain was more fearsome and harrowing to travel through than any previous incident of rain recorded in Gossafila. Sister Renata informed me that she had been wearing a white frock, which took on hideous patterns in the storm. Stains of blood red that appeared as sigils written by the devil himself. Sister Renata was taken by consumption within a fortnight of her return to Userthal Abbey. Book 9, Chapter 72. During one of Bishop Martin's many visits to my quarters, he recalled that he met a young man named Albrecht who asked to join the convent, moments prior to the refusal of Abbot Verenius on the basis of a history of usury. After Verenius had cleared away, Martins accompanied the boy to the garden to offer some encouragement. One could take it upon himself to be a priest in the municipalities, a less prestigious but valuable role, he said to the young man. Albrecht said that his only option was to be confined to the convent, to do God's work in closed quarters, because he was known in all the municipalities of Sudlich-Weinstrasse, for his late parents were wealthy, and he an infamous man about town. He could not bring himself to return for the following reason. His mother, who he said was nefarious in her social dealings, died unexpectedly on the eve of the Feast of the Holy Innocents, though she was unaware of her worldly transition. She continued to serve her son Albrecht dinners cooked by spectral hands, of which Albrecht testified consisted of boiled spiders and snakes. Book 9, Chapter 91. Some events are not worth recalling when attention is paid only to trivial detail, but it is the so-called trivial details of the following happening that make it a memorable case of warning for the living. An hour after Matins, a local priest in the small municipality of the Weinstrasse went out for a walk and professed to have seen two beautiful women pinned beneath a larch tree. Recalling the Grecian word of dryads and nymphs, the priest kept his difference from these women, whose wailing swayed like grass upon the ground. He returned to the chapel to seek the help of the groundskeeper, who brought a saw along to set the ill-starred girls free. They found nothing beneath the tree, not human or insect or animal. The priest apologized to the groundskeeper, though there was no need. He told the priest that several weeks prior, a man's wife and mistress took to a violent fight in the village, both perishing in the scuffle over what turned out to be a perilous and godless man. I reckon they'll spend an eternity pinned to the ground fighting over that devil, the groundskeeper said. Book 9, Chapter 27. I was once told by a pious man that his dreadful wife, who saw fit to hit their 13 children with iron pans and set fire upon their toes for missing chores, was ailing with consumption and made several demands upon her deathbed. She said to make sure the proper coins were exchanged so that she may gain burial in the cemetery behind the monastery in a shaded place under the great magnolia tree where, quote, perhaps the Lord's eye will miss her beneath the blossoms, end quote. Despite her faithful husband's adherence to such a request, her place of burial became a site of much horror and contemplation. The soil continually bubbled up and expelled her coffin and body from the ground, after which her corpse burst into flames. The passing Orthodox remarked to his pupil that there is a soul that the Lord God would not permit to see the day of resurrection. Book 9, Chapter 29. A certain wealthy knight found that his firstborn child was not his own, and rather the product of an unholy affair between his wife and some unnamed man of the church. Regarding the child as a living blaspheme, he swore to strangle it in its swaddling clothes if he set eyes upon it ever again. Despairing, the knight's wife Osanna brought the unnamed and unbaptized child to Yusserthal Abbey, pleading for sanctuary until she could make proper arrangements to escape the territory of the knight. Though at first sent away by Sister Ursula, Abbot Berenius met Osanna weeping in the garden and offered her the respite she sought. Not a fortnight after her arrival, Osanna was found with her throat cut, her baby missing from its makeshift cradle. My fellow monks, nuns, and the abbot, deeply shaken by this horror, saw to it that greater precautions would be taken regarding the security of the abbey. It was suggested that the village should be contacted to search for the child, but the abbot said it was likely too late, that the wicked knight was undoubtedly in possession of the child and intent on fulfilling his dark promise. At Matins the following morning, we all prayed for the souls of mother and child, that their suffering was complete upon the earth and they would rest soundly until the day of our Lord. Suspicions remained regarding the fate of the child. A sister whose name I will keep to myself, prone to prophetic dream visitations of the dead, of which she would only relay to me, insisted that she felt not the child in the arms of God, but rather that it was alive, still in great danger. I brought my suspicions again to the abbot, who displayed a temper and frustration not befitting a man of the cloth. We all left the abbot to his duties, though a number of us overheard strange pleadings from his quarters, prayers of desperation and fear that revealed him to be a man of wavering conviction. One of our sisters has attested to me that on the 13th night after the killing of Osanna, a female spirit was seen approaching the abbey from the direction of the dirt road leading out from the woods. She was nude and bloody, heavy breasts squirting coagulated gossamer milk. Several accounts from the nunnery aligned Sister Bertha's observations. On the eve of the 27th night after her death, her husband, the infamous knight, came to the abbey, searching for her and the child. The nuns did not permit him entry per the instruction of the abbot. He shouted blasphemies down the entry hall of the abbey, chiding the monks and abbot to come out and reveal which fiend had violated his wife in the act of treachery against God and himself. The knight, demoralized by his own fury and the loss of his wife and child, left the abbey without answers. Suspicion has grown within the walls here, without end, though our contemplation has found its hideous answer. Our dear sister, prophetic dreams, can attest to the sight of the infant corpse in the garden bed, his jaw shattered around a slab of limestone, and the crucifix of the abbot's staff in his rotting hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Farah.
That's great. Sexy female Lovecraft indeed. That like really nails it.
So cancel my ticket to New York. I need to meet this guy this night with like 20 corpses on his back.
Oh man.
Boy,
Sounds
what's
like a
your
keeper.
number? Okay, so if you have any questions for Farah, please put in the chat or slide into my DMs. I don't really care. Brian, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, next up is Brian Allen Carr. I met him at Bizarre Archon 2014, I think. He was definitely one of the best writers there, in my opinion. No shade to anyone else who was there. Actually, I have one of his books, SIP. I actually have a hardcover. I think his latest, your latest is Opioid Indiana, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just let you read.
Cool, man. This is from a book I'm writing called Glumtucky. I was gonna read something different today. Like I woke up this morning, I was like, I ain't fucking reading from this because it felt weird, and I was gonna write something, but then I got busy at work. So here we go. It's about a dude who fucking has like this weird thing where like a moon fucking tells him the story, and things happen and words occur and language.
Sounds amazing.
Moon, you asshole. I hate your miserable bleeding and your depressing yarns. I don't want to let you fuck me up. Man, this is it. People don't exist until they exist to other people. It's a stupid rule baked into the universe at the quantum level. Carlo Rovelli says, the joint properties of two objects exist only in relation to a third. Okay? So if there's a little girl in an abandoned warehouse in Prague getting cigars put out on the soles of her feet by a street mime, until you know about it, it's not really happening. If a tree falls in the woods and no one perceives it, there isn't really a tree, motherfucker. It's like Schopenhauer says, the world is idea. A long time ago, I had a brother, and my brother killed himself. We both lived in Austin, Texas, and then he moved away and disappeared for a few days. And a few days after that, I got a phone call at 2 in the morning, and he'd been found burned to death in his car. But if I hadn't answered the phone call, if I just let it ring, taken a cab to the airport, and moved away to Alaska and never touched a fucking telephone again, my brother might be very much still alive. When I found out about his death, it broke my fucking heart, and I would spend my days wandering the Austin, Texas streets with a plastic bottle of scotch tucked into a backpack, and all my mornings started with me saying, not today, and all my nights ended with me saying, not tomorrow. But I accumulated enough plastic scotch bottles to build an ocean liner with and sail off into the greater void of nowhere on a plastic bottled boat. But the further I sailed, the more bottles I needed, and it gets expensive to float over miseries on a platform of lies. So I married an engineer because I needed to make money, and the engineer got me a job with her dad. I spent my days crawling beneath houses and in and out of attics and through all the nooks and crannies of strangers' homes, looking for mold and water damage and looking at other things that no human being had ever seen, sill plates and floor joists and main beams and stem walls. Spent my evenings fighting with the engineer. See, most first marriages do not work. I became a great fan of malt liquor and moonlight. I began drinking high gravity to save money, and I would drink with my feet in the South Texas canal water. I wanted to be destroyed by something. High gravity is made by Anheuser-Busch. Technically, they're called hurricanes, but I never called them that because high gravity was the bigger words on the can, It has an 8.1 alcohol content. Some people drink it and get racist. I drank it and talked to the moon. Hello, you fucking moon, I'd holler. High gravity tastes like a beer that someone has poured a shot of rubbing alcohol into. So the second one tastes great. If you spend your days trapped in a crawl space, you need an open sky to wash your mind with, and the night sky is the widest. Back home, trees are mesquite, thorny wooden hands just large enough to hold a person with. Their leaves are like the blades of a fern. I'd perch and lurch through the loamy orchard rows, guzzling high gravity. Never drink alone. Once I woke in a dust field after being roused by howling packs of faraway canal dogs. A voice of light came to me from the shadows. Mister, the voice said, you look lonely and sad as fuck. I couldn't tell where the voice was coming from, and I had an unopened high gravity, so I popped it and watched it fizz, and I drank it guzzle guzzle. And then the moon winked at me. Promise me, if you ever talk to the moon, don't tell anyone. They won't believe you, but what they will believe is this. They'll believe you lost your fucking mind. According to the moon, this is how Glumtucky came to be. A backwards comet and a planet collided. It was an accident. In some faraway solar system, a magician practiced magic by aiming spells at the sky. He wasn't human, at least not fully. Maybe he had an octopus face or bird hands or shark ears, but he was dressed in the manner of all magicians. He had a cape and a wand and a pointy hat with stars on it, and his flowing robes fell to his curly-toed shoes. He had wiry spectacles that clung queerly to his face. His wand, obviously, was carved from rare wood. He had a leather pouch with a dragon's heart in it. He had charms in his pocket that jingled. He was trying his magic. He was doing his best. He shot a reversing spell at the heavens, and then Glumtucky was bound to be. Don't judge. Where the magician lived, people feared magic. So if they saw you perform magic, not tricks, but real magic, like giving a grown woman a third boobie or giving a young man hooves like a calf, they chased you with torches. They tied you to a post. They lashed your skin made with a whip from another animal's skin until your back was shreds and nickels and greased with bloop and goop and gore. On that magician's shitty planet, because it was at least shitty to magicians, there were always magicians bound to the wrist and tied to posts, naked except for the pony hats and curly-toed shoes, and their backs were bleeding and crowds were screaming again, because crowds always want to watch other people suffering. And the magician didn't care to become that kind of magician. So he would go out into the wilderness at night and whisper incantations at the stars privately, far away from angry crowds that would punish him for being who he was. Thus, Glumtucky. What was the spell? Who knows? Who cares? All we know for sure is that a spell left a magician's wand long ago, streaked out into space, pierced the heart of a comet doing its orbiting, and then the comet slowed to a still, its bright orange tail fluttering like dragon's fire, and then, compelled by the spell, the tail became a dart tip, and the comet moved against its natural course, back through blackest space, this time to a different pattern of orbits and against other gravities through other systems. Hello, stars! Nice to see you again, the comet hollered to the stars. You look different, the stars said to the comet. Something new with your hair? I'm backwards, the comet said, but I don't know why or how. And the comet retraced its orbit until it neared planet Glum, where all the astrophysicists and scientists were puzzled at the comet tail that flickered and waggled ahead of the comet as it moved. The comet is supposed to be back this way for 1,000 years, the chief scientist said, looking up from a telescope that he had been called to view through. Stranger still, doctor, his assistant said. She was an average woman with a blue afro, thick as birthday cake, and khaki-colored eyes. It's moving backwards, she said. Backwards, said the chief scientist. He lowered his eyes back to the viewfinder. Backward, agreed the assistant. Backward indeed, the lead scientist confirmed. He lifted his eyes from the viewfinder again. But how? I'm not sure that anyone knows what our moon is, but I've wandered in and out of libraries and across a plague of internet articles trying to decipher what its origins might truly be. Because as the moon told me, it only knew of the backwards comet smacking the distant planet Glum because of an old job it used to have fighting darkness and hoisting elsewhere's oceans. The most common argument I have come across is that our moon came to be when a now obliterated planet called Theia collided with Earth, and all the debris from that collision slowly accumulated and was polished in the Earth's only satellite as it settled into current orbits over a vast stretch of time. Fuck that. paragraphs long. Perhaps Planet Glove is also a now destroyed world. Perhaps all moons and planets come to be through a chain reaction of planet smacking and satellite creation and planet smacking and satellite creation. I cannot find a scientist to confirm or discredit my hypothesis, but I also don't really mix with a wide range of scientists. They don't really drink malt liquor with their feet in the canal. But assuming I'm correct, maybe the moon's old job was not being the moon at all. Fuck jobs anyway. Take them all. It's a promise to feed me. Jobs are what you have when you don't have what you want. Jobs are orchestrated manipulations culled from generations of conspiracies and contrived from decades of now defunct best practices. As it is, I know that after Planet Glum was smacked by this wayward comet that was backwards, Glum sat nearly dormant for centuries as the few remaining citizens of that world hoisted themselves back together out of the wreckage, rebuilding their societies beneath permanently gray skies. No one will tell you this, but a spell is like a poison that undoes physics. When the comet was struck by the reversing spell, it was indeed contaminated with undoing, and this undoing radiated out from the smoldering comet as it steamed into the atmosphere of Glum. Much of what the comet was broke apart upon entry to Glum's atmosphere, but the vast majority of the celestial bodies stayed intact at a strewn field of meteorites circled an impact crater where the comet spewed backwards from. Backwards across the sky, backwards across the fields, backwards to the trees and over mountains, backwards over the seas and into canyons, caves, backwards, hills, backwards, valleys, glens, ravines, backwards, fruited plains of backwards, amber waves of grains of backwards, sea to shining sea of backwards, purple mountains, backwards, good brotherhood of backwards. God set his grace on backwards. It all came steaming from the comet, steamed away like magic vomit, and this fucked the people of Glum up, man. They weren't the same anymore. A tragedy is a tragedy. You cannot frame it. You cannot put poison into something and expect it to not be poisonous. Thanks, kiddos.
That was so good, dude. Man.
I think I'm crying a little bit.
I know I'm crying because I didn't write that. I'm so just like knocked out. Wow,
everyone here is like, fuck, back to the drawing board.
That really that actually made me think of the Dead Milkmen song "Stewart," which if you haven't heard it, it's a really good song. That's all
totally.
I could think about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That level of rambling, just like conspiratorial, but like metaphysical. I love, what was the thing about a spell is poison for physics, something like that. I mean, my God, just like every line in there is just, oof, what a gem. My God.
Thanks. I ripped it all off Wikipedia.
I ripped my life off Wikipedia. It's fine. Who do we have next? Jackie.
This reading's dope. This is just cool.
Is my sound okay? I'm kind of quiet. All right.
Okay.
I want that.
So,
cool.
Jackie, you're next. I'll spotlight you. Okay.
Wow.
So Jackie actually wrote one of my favorite books this year, Daryl, which is out from Clash Books. I've never heard a voice quite like this, and I hope that you feel the same. It seems like it's been a lot of people's favorite book lately. So yeah, here's Jackie.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm going to read from this book called Daryl. I'm going to start at the beginning. Just because that's where the book starts. So the first chapter is called LeBron. You live vicariously through celebrities. I live vicariously through the guys who fucked my wife. But sure, okay, I'm the weird one. Well, let me ask you this. You watch sports at all? I could ask, like, what's the point if you aren't the one playing, but it isn't exactly a fair question. See, I think a lot about LeBron James. I can imagine his NBA rings on the bedside table next to Mindy's wedding ring and these little antique porcelain ashtrays that Mindy's mom gave us for our wedding. I bet he's got a great grip and big hands that move decisively, a touch with no tickle, no trepidation, no contingency plan, just going to exactly the right place and going straight there. That's basketball. I'm sure he's all around athletic, but for some reason I specifically imagine his hands moving Mindy around. 6'8", God. But look, I know as well as you do that that's just a fantasy. And even in fantasy, I try to keep this stuff mostly confined to people confirmed to be in the lifestyle, which I'm pretty sure he isn't. Because it's a little objectifying, like I try to do right by people. He's a professional athlete. He's focused on the game. He's focused on, I don't know, his own family probably, his own problems, maybe just his own fun. I'm just saying he's got a life. He isn't just there for me to look at. Just because a guy can fuck my wife doesn't mean he wants to. That was a hard lesson for me to learn, actually. But I'm glad I thought it through because I really don't want to project too much on the guy. Like, it's bad enough. Everybody wants to compare him to Michael Jordan. By the way, I don't want to start an argument about this stuff, but I do think he's better. And you know what? Even if he isn't a better player, I like him better. Jordan always gave me the willies. He had those big wide pants and a little hip and that. Anyway, that's not in the book. All I'm saying is I'd never write a fan letter asking him to come meet us after a game like, "Dear LeBron, I want to see your strong, perfect hands gripping my wife, palming practically her entire body, ... I want her to have your baby, love, Daryl." I'd never write that. I'd write sincerely. That's the first chapter.
Amazing.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So Daryl has a therapist of dubious qualification named Clive, who in the early part of the book he believes is British. That turns out not to be quite true. He's just sort of internationally educated in English, and that gives people a certain kind of accent, right? It's an enunciation, and it's a kind of sort of vaguely European seeming propriety, but he's not an Englishman. But at this point in the book, I just have to clarify that he seems to be an Englishman, right? So wait, there's a door that's wide open. Let me close that. Okay. Hold on. Yeah, we're all good. I'm back. Okay, so this chapter is called British. Couples therapy was really weird. It felt like Clive and Mindy were having a conversation I wasn't in on. He weirdly suggested that he'd like to watch me and Mindy have sex. He's kind of an alternative guy. Somatic was the word he used. It was hard for me. He made eye contact with Mindy the whole time, scribbled in his notebook, and left. Is he even a real therapist? I guess I saw the diploma, and Mindy says insurance is paying for it. She handles the money, I don't know. But still, how embarrassing. I don't see how it really fixes any of my problems. I thought maybe it doesn't have to. It's a helping relationship, that's enough. Before leaving, he gave us both massages, which I thought was a nice touch. Really strong hands. Is this how they do things in merry old England? I keep forgetting to ask where he's from. Mindy seemed to think he was great, so we'll do another session. But there's a moment I just can't get out of my head from when we were having sex. So just as I was about to come, Clive looked up from his notebook and shook his head at me. Wow. Like I was doing something I shouldn't be doing. What the hell? I'm not that bad at this. Why would he do that? I thought the whole point of therapists was to be non-judgmental. I read Carl Rogers in college. I remember this stuff. Therapy shouldn't be a British guy who looks like my dad making fun of how I have sex. Frankly, I'm a little bit steamed. And even though it's similar in a way to some of the cuckolding scenes that we've done before, but, now apparently in spite of the sober thing, he wants to give us some drug. Anyway, let me skip ahead a little bit. I'm trying to keep it clean for Twitch, I feel like there's a lot of kids on there, a lot of gamers, and I strive to.
I don't think any kids are listening, but so go ahead.
Oh, in that case. Oh, wait, actually my background means I can't really hit the dab. Oh well. I'm searching for a chapter. Don't worry, I'm gonna find it. The order I wanted to do this in, just real quick. Yeah, so So let me skip ahead. Girl's wife Mindy, she has a relationship with this butch woman named Kit, and I feel like I always want to say something kind to the lesbian community, and this is sort of what I thought I could offer. Here we are. Kit 1. I prefer hiking to rock climbing and cuckoldry to relationship anarchy. Is this just a generational thing? A friend told me to join a dating site and it's full of these polyamory people. I can't stand it. That is not what I'm doing. What I ought to do maybe is find more trans women like Luthun. Well, you have to read the book. She's a character. Maybe we'll hear more about her. I pay so much attention to them online. It seems like we've got some stuff in common. Like they joke about it anyway, like the kind of sissy kind of aspect of everything. But it feels very awkward to jump into a conversation. There's a kind of standoff there. Also, they all seem to be fucking each other and don't take kindly to interest, even as they complain about no one loving them. It's a mess. Have you ever heard of a chaser? Yes, apparently that's the name for a guy who likes them. You ever heard of a bigot? Well, apparently that's the name for a guy who doesn't. So what can you do? How can I acknowledge that we're alike without either saying that they're male or that I'm not? Gender is a fucking prison, man. Maybe I should get a rainbow haircut and say that again louder. Mindy would kill me, but maybe not since she's some kind of a dyke now. I do wish sometimes that I was just not childish enough to really live in trans world, but I don't know. I'm mostly okay with what I can pick up from a distance. Anyway, what's been going on with me? Not too much. Mindy met a butch woman named Kit, and it's kind of a sweet, but not at all charged dynamic for me. Kit just impresses me a lot. She's such like a real person. She cooked us breakfast the other day, and it was just so solid and practical and perfect. None of my pretentious French sauces. This was hearty cast iron cooking. She's from the same Midwest working man stock as Bill. And I was a little mad at her the other day because she used my towel after chopping wood. But then again, happy to have a cord of firewood split like that. And she just jumped in her truck and came back with towels and other stuff she needed to fix something, the engine. She's out there now under the truck, messing around with something. I'm just changing the oil. I didn't need a new towel. I was just going to wash it. But now we have more towels, right? And that's just a little thing that makes life better. She also told me to stop watering our plants so often, and the pampas grass already looks better. So Kit's full of that kind of advice, and she always follows through. I'm glad Mindy's happy, and it's amazing to get to know someone like Kit. I mean, normally, how would I ever? It's bad enough that I'm a man, but in another way, it's like I'm not enough of one. It doesn't feel like cuckolding in the way that's hot for me. It's just like a complicated relationship. Kit asked me about my feelings and surprisingly shared hers. Under the gruff exterior, she really gets people, and it's just so human, again, real. Mostly, I couldn't stop thinking about how I can never be like that. But why is that actually? Could I? I kind of wish everyone in the world was a little more like her, but I know I'm not. Thank God I get to see Bill a little later. Guys, not fellas, something for us for once. Bill lets me be me. Kit's never been anything but nice to me, but she sets off some anxiety. She makes me feel like a fake. I always thought if I was a girl, I would have been straight. Like most are. But for sure, I wouldn't have been the Kit type. But I'd be pretty and passive, more like Mindy. But Mindy isn't really passive. She just likes to take it. I'm starting to realize that I'm a little jealous of her. Like, why can't I have someone like Kit who's strong for me? And I mean, Kit, okay, strong for herself. But her eyes, they're very gray, deep. It reminds me of Clyde, but more human. I guess Bill is sort of that, but it's such a schoolboy dynamic. I'm sort of his faggot, his lackey or something. I always had friendships like that. I become some guy's sidekick, and eventually the friendship falls apart when he gets a girlfriend. And we never put it together. That was youth. Again and again, I'd have said, I believe in male friendship. Sure thing, Walt Whitman. I remember once trying to convince Mindy to be dominant. It didn't work for either of us. I said, Mistress Mindy, and we all started laughing too hard. Nothing to be done, maybe. All right. Now, there's more about Kit, obviously, and Bill, but I want to skip ahead because, we're talking about guys' nights out, and I think I probably have enough time for one more little chapter. The book's made of short chapters, so I'm going to do one more.
I lost track of time, so you're good. Whatever it is.
Okay, word. But I don't want to go over. It's late here, actually. I'm in the Atlantic time zone, so I'm east of even New York, which I appreciate your not putting New York time on the flyer. I think that was very bold,
Very discriminatory of me.
Yeah. No, I mean their thin pizza, let's just be honest, is bullshit. I want a boat of Lou Malnati. That's
you want to throw down with me? Let's fight in the street.
Okay, we'll fight after the break. We'll fight during the break because after this.
Yeah, no, we're gonna talk about the bean too. I used to live in Chicago. I know that city a little bit. Okay, But here's a chapter of the book, right? Yeah. I still do write books, right? So this chapter is called March Madness 1. And just to kind of give some like general framing is that, Daryl is a guy who's in this cuckolding, swinging kind of lifestyle, and he's kind of exploring a little beyond what's in that lifestyle. He's sort of finding out some things about himself. And Bill is this guy that's in their life, kind of a, well, he's a really down to earth and kind dude with a absolutely just a fucking legend, just packing heat, right? But he's kind of falling in love with his friend, and he's gone over to watch the game, right? So March Madness 1. I went over to Bill's last night for the game, and I was dressed a little different than usual in a way I want to describe. It was kind of my usual outfit, but a little more relaxed, letting my body show just imperceptibly more through the clothes. I also shaved my arms, which had a subtle but for me tremendous effect. I don't know why that worked so much magic for me. It's not like I was ever a hairy guy, but it's similar to the way a room turns bright after you sweep the floor, even if it wasn't that dirty to begin with. I can't tell if they saw. There were some awkward moments, like when I asked Bill if he wanted another beer, I felt like all of his buddies were looking at me. Maybe because I didn't ask them. Room full of guys, I should have said, I'm getting another beer, anybody want one? Instead I said, looking dry, Bill, want another? Sure, Daryl. I might as well have brought it to him on my knees. When I sat down next to him on the long couch also, I felt their eyes. We bought him that couch, and it's out of place here. Too bright, new, lotion smooth, like my arms. It isn't expensive, but it looks expensive compared to what's around, the dinginess of this place. I could have sat a few man-widths away if I thought about it, but I sat right next to him, not even thinking about it. So it's just the two of us on the left edge of the couch. Scooting away seems weirder. When I left the room, I heard a bit of conversation. He's a faggot, bro. Then Bill's voice, come on, man, Daryl's my friend. And really, I'm really glad to have a friend like Bill. I just wonder about some of these other guys, how repressed or whatever it is they are. And what does it even mean that Bill's their friend? I started to feel that it looked weird if I stayed past everybody else. So I just left at the end of the game saying I had to get home to my wife. I said it very loud like that, and I stressed it, my wife. I said, let me know if you're still hanging out later, though I might still be around. Very nonchalant, and left, filling the eyes again. I consider this kind of a failed experiment, but I'm not giving up. Just thinking about it, like, I'm almost thinking those guys would have been nicer to me if I'd been wearing the Christmas dress. I don't want to embarrass Bill. Obviously, he's competent, he can take it, but I don't want to drag him through anything on my account. And I basically don't belong in his world, and I've got to remember that. I don't know. Maybe he'll say he can deal with it, and then at some point there's a breaking point. He falls out with his friends, he blames me for losing them. And even if he thinks he can deal with that, he can't plan for how it'll feel, so I can't let it happen. What's scary to me is I can step just a little ways out, right? Like shaving my arms, wearing a tighter t-shirt, and it's like, it's already too much for the boys. But at the same time, for Bill, I don't think it's anywhere near enough. He told me that when he's getting a blowjob, he doesn't really care who's doing it. That's cool, but I want him to be able to open his eyes. I want him to see me and feel turned on. I want him to love me. I guess I've never admitted that before. I don't think he's going to, but I'm going to find out. I wonder if a gay guy would. Probably, but now I feel a little bit like Bill myself, or maybe like one of those old-fashioned gay guys I used to read about. It'd say, I don't want another queen, honey. I need a man. Uthun is like that too. Though I always feel like she's putting on toughness. Doesn't really want it like that, whatever she says. She says a lot about how people were more uninhibited and rougher back in the old days, and talks like she wants to live that way. But I think I've got more experience with rough guys than she does. Is she just chicken? Sounds like she lives in some kind of lesbian world with other trans women. Whatever it is, I'm beginning to think nobody wants a faggot. Not even me. And I'm a faggot, but I'm not even gay. It's hell. But hold on. It's not hell. This is something good I got from Clive, in spite of his psycho vampire shit. Again, you have to read the book if I know. I need to break some of these thought loops. I get to feeling so doomed when the smallest thing goes wrong. I took a little step today, and it didn't all go how I planned, but I didn't want to write it off. Nothing that was worth it ever worked right away. Shaving my body hair, yeah, makes sense. I bet I could soften my body in other ways without setting off everybody's bells. Just keep it subtle. I've been talking to Uthun about this, and she suggested I could do my eyebrows, my nails, tighter clothes, maybe subtle makeup. I don't know. It all sounds like too much. I feel like she's trying to convince me to be trans, which kind of pisses me off. Like, she sort of has this script for how people are supposed to develop. We're all supposed to come out, and it's very one size fits all. All the subtlety of Alcoholics Anonymous. Admit your powerlessness. It helps to know that, Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead. Actually, I think that we're really at time, so I'm gonna stop there. And thanks for having me.
Thank you. That was exactly the voice I was imagining when I was reading it. So that was really nice.
That was good.
Thank you.
So we're gonna take like a 10-minute break. Like you can stay here and talk or do whatever you want. And then it will be, I think it's Chandler. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all
Okay.
due.
Fun Q&A.
In a Q&A on them.
Oh yeah. Forgot my own schedule. Nobody asked any questions, I don't think.
I think a couple of people did.
Did they? Can you send them to me?
Oh yeah, I can see one of them is Sedaris and influence. Yes, Amy Sedaris in Strangers with Candy is a huge influence. One thing I resent about Zoom is that you can't play music over it easily, or sound effects, or anything like that. It's a little dry. Did any of you ever figure out how to do that? Like, I mean, I like having a background, so you can't see I have a messy room.
I can hum.
Yeah, that works. No, we could all just start doing some music. I'm ready to sing some songs.
I have my messy room. I keep it that way. It looks like I've moved in here like the other day, but I've lived here like 9 years.
It's all new reading behind you though, right?
Yeah. It's all my to be read pile that's gonna end up killing me one day when it falls over.
You've ever missed your whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you get asked for a blurb every 2 days.
every 2 hours. I feel bad though, because like I try not to say
it though, dude. That's how you know.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I try not to say no. But I read a book the other day.
You have to though. I bet you're getting hit up a lot.
I try not to say no, but I read a book the other day. It was so bad. And I just said no right off the bat. And then the person was like, well, can't you just give me one anyway? I was like, no, I was trying to be nice. I said, hey man, this book ain't really for me. I didn't really connect with it. And they kept pushing me and I was like, I hate it. So it's like, I don't think I can help you. But good luck in your future endeavor.
Hey, has your life changed a whole bunch in the last year and a half?
Oh, man, let me tell you, I went from working 60 hours a week at a hardware store and doing like side work as a bouncer to like being able to go like buy a car that doesn't smell like somebody else's cigarettes. So it's like,
that's badass.
That's the dream right there.
I know.
I like having a car that doesn't have special instructions anymore. It's like, hey, you can't go above 55 or that.
Brake, then throw it and drive, then started.
Exactly. If it doesn't start, get outside and hit the starter module with a broomstick, and then it'll be all right. But you might see some fire, but that's normal. It's like,
fire happens with cars.
Exactly. Don't worry about that. It's like if you see fire inside, now we got a problem. No, but it's been pretty cool, man. It's been it's fucking surreal. It really is.
I bet that's killer, dude. Keep riding that way, bro. That's awesome, man.
Oh man, I gotta ride it, man, until it runs out. My mama used to say the shine wears off a new pennies real quick. So I know this won't always be like this. So I'm gonna enjoy it as long as it lasts. So your reading was fucking awesome, man. That was really, really good. Yeah, man. Is that something you're working on now? Is that something gonna be coming out soon, or?
I'm working on it now. I think Clash is gonna maybe put it out, depending upon how much I fuck it up before it's done. Yeah, I'm working on it right now.
Well, I'm gonna have to get it, man, because that was.
Well, I'm gonna have to ask you I'm gonna put it in your little blurb pile behind you.
I'm gonna bug you too, Essay. I'm gonna bug you too.
Yeah. It's like number 487. No, man, that was really good, man. That was some
I appreciate it.
down home rule Bukowski stuff, man. I love that stream of consciousness way of writing. It's hard, man. A lot of people think it's easy, but it's hard as shit.
I appreciate it.
No problem, man.
Christoph, are you doing a Sprite?
What's that? I couldn't hear. What'd you say, man?
You crack open a Sprite?
That's a bubbly, man. No, I'm being lame. Not true.
Ryan, I heard that you're not on Twitter. Is that right?
Rarely. Every now and again, I get on just to piss off like 7 people, and then I get off.
It's
Well, since I might not talk to you again, I just wanted to say that was awesome and you killed it.
Oh, thank you, bro. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, yeah. I'm usually, hopefully not on Twitter.
I'm always sad when he leaves because it's sort of this like magnificent inferno, and then he's just gone.
Yeah, you're like people that's actually like good at Twitter.
I'm the worst social media person.
It's like I can't like any of it being like the publisher now, and it sucks because I want to like so Ryan Allen Carr's quote, and I just can't. I just silently like, yeah, that's good.
But Mandy could maybe.
Yeah, Mandy could, but Mandy's like he's in retirement right now.
Oh, you guys had a little disagreement.
She'll do one more.
Mandy done? What the fuck are you talking about? Mandy's retired.
I'll do one about the shark attack erotica. That she'll do that down the road. I just been too busy, you know.
I get it.
Okay.
She'll come back though.
She always does.
Alexandrine, I loved your first story about being drunk in New York. I've been drunk in New York, and it's the most gloriously terrifying thing on earth.
Yeah, it is. I was in New York, and that was all how I spent the entire time. Was I was drunk from the beginning to the end for 2 fucking years, and I got used to it. But boy, the shit that I got up to on those trains and just being there was surprising.
I got drunk, and I decided I was in New York, and I was up there meeting with the publishers, and you know, I'm from southeastern Virginia. I'm really a deep South country boy, so I was like, oh, there's a bar in every corner. I'm gonna ride the A train from like the top of Manhattan to Battery Park. I'm just gonna keep getting off and getting into bars and getting back on the train. And by the time I got down to Battery Park, I was so damn drunk. I felt like my liver was gonna jump up my back and run down the street like a scalded dog. And I ended up in this bar, and there was these Chechen dudes in there. And then they were like, what do you do? What do you do? I said, I'm a crime writer. I'm like, you don't know nothing about crime. So they're telling me like horrible murder stories. Yeah, I had to stomp a kid in front of his dad, like, hey man, I just want to drink. I don't want to know about you kicking a 9-year-old's ass. His dad owed you some money. And so I was like, this is so surreal. I have to leave now. And they're like, no, you have to drink with us. I was already drunk. Then I went just to blackout because those guys drink like it's their business, and business is good. Oh my gosh. And it was funny though, because then I ended up hanging out at that same bar. A bunch of Filipino folks came in for karaoke. So then the Chechen dudes and the Filipino dudes and some Italian dudes are all singing karaoke. And we like ended up going to another bar, and it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, well, I guess I'll go back to my hotel now. They were like, no, we're gonna go have a Bloody Marys. I'm like, I can't drink like this anymore. I'm used to like 2 o'clock passing out somewhere, going to Waffle House. This is some
sheer dedication,
Olympic level drinking. Yeah, I can't. This is like Simone Biles drinking. I can't do this. I gotta go.
This shit is a lifestyle. Like you don't go until like, until a reasonable time. You don't go until the bar closes. You go until like something bad has happened, and then you're like, I should go home. That's how it is.
Yes.
You're like, oh, this ain't right. I need to get out of here. Like that's when you go home.
Well, another time I was up there. That's so funny that you said that. I was up there and we were drinking. We were at this bar on 43rd Street called Peter Dillon's Irish Pub. we're drinking and we're drinking and we're drinking and we're singing karaoke and all this stuff. And we didn't leave until these two hookers got fighting over this drunk guy. This drunk guy, they were both trying to get to take him on a date, and they got fighting.
Wait, that's when you left?
And one of them pulled. Yeah, that's what
I would have been like,
That's when you stay and start tipping. Make it rain, baby.
You do that Michael Jackson gif, and you're just like start eating popcorn and you're watching it.
One of them pulled out of her purse. Anybody know what a tire thumper is? Like it's a little short bat, like a little short baseball bat. One of them pulled a tire thumper out of her purse and started wailing on the other one. And I was like, well, time to settle up the bill. Give me my tab. I'm gonna get the hell out of here. Because Babe Ruth over here is trying to hit one out of the park. So, but yeah, like Alexandrine said, it doesn't stop until something terrible happens. I couldn't live in New York. I would die. I would drink myself to death.
okay, I think it's been about 10 minutes, maybe. I don't know. I'm losing track of time. It's like a weird time warp. So the only question I saw really that hadn't been answered was from Troy, which is Indiana or Texas, pros and cons. And the people that just read have priority, but if nobody answers it, honestly, anyone can answer it.
Wait, Indiana or Texas?
Yes. You're supposed to do like a breakdown of which one is better.
So, Indiana. Alex, you're from Indiana, right?
Yeah, I'm from Indiana. I've never been to Texas.
What part of Indiana?
Evansville, Indiana. Ass end of it, right north of Kentucky.
No, I know Evansville. All right, so I live in central Indiana. I would say that Indiana has seasons, 4 of them, and Texas has 1.25 seasons. So that's like what? 2.75 more seasons? So Indiana wins. There's more seasons. They're both good. They're both different, man. It depends where you're at and who you're hanging out with.
I liked your math explanation better. I think if
Yeah.
the math is there, you got it.
Math is data.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really argue with the
prove anything.
logic.
Yeah, there's more seasons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the seasons they have are the shitty ones. Like so,
You can't have a shitty season without a good one next to it, though.
like fall, spring, winter. Like those are all garbage.
You can't have winter without fall. Fall's okay. You can't have spring without summer. Spring's all right. I don't know. I mean, it's Texas is like 100 degrees for like 800 days a year, and here,
Yeah, and you're gonna
Texas-
freeze to death in the winter now too.
I think it's
so.
always Texas is nice because you always like suffer a little bit and you never forget it.
Oliver, are you still living in Texas?
No, I'm in Oklahoma right now.
What's the difference, though?
Oklahoma, from what I understand, Oklahoma is where the Texans like running from the law come to.
Yeah,
If they have open warrants, that's who shows
Yeah.
up.
Follow-up question.
North Texas. I remember when I lived
Okay.
in North Texas. I would
Chris-
say this all
Christoph
the
has
time.
a follow-up question.
Jackie, because I'm curious now. All right, Jackie, New York City or Canada?
I was actually still thinking about Indiana and Texas. I mean, I've lived in both, and I think I've been happy in both. I feel like my stories of New York are a little different. Like I got sober in New York, so I saw a different side of that city. But thinking about Indiana, I used to live in Chicago, so I would have to cross Indiana a lot, and I would, and you're thinking about it a lot because you just cornfield, and I had the feeling with Indiana that it's this kind of like weak state where it's this kind of race to the bottom where they're trying to hold on to jobs in some way. So BP has this huge refinery in Whiting, Indiana, just outside of Gary, and they're like, yeah, like fuck it, like we don't care about environmental regulations, just keep the jobs here somehow. Fuck it, we'll keep a minimum wage really low, like and so everything is about like just kind of like selling out the state as fast as possible to these mega corporations, whether they're ag or oil or whatever. And that seems really different to me than Texas, because in Texas, there like really is a lot of like, you know, it's like a nation unto itself. It just happens to be insane. That just seems like a really different kind of flavor. Like any part of America, if it got sufficiently fucked, would become Indiana. But Texas will destroy itself and like it will commit like a very unique suicide. It's kind of like the Mishima of states.
Yeah, come over here and say that. I'm just kidding.
I mean, maybe I shouldn't be talking shit. I don't know. I gotta out myself as like a
Northwest Indiana is it's a suburb of Chicago. So like big cities always feel like that. Like in the suburbs of big cities, it's always like they would rape themselves out to do anything. But most other places in America, like once you get like 400 miles outside of a big city, they won't quite destroy themselves the same way. They will, but it's not quite as bad. But Texas, yeah, Texas would sell itself in a heartbeat for $1 bill for sure. I mean,
Yo,
Texas
how
is
come, as someone who has had friends from both Oklahoma and Texas, I hear a lot of Texans defending Texas. I never hear any Oklahomans defending Oklahoma. They just kind of get sad when you ask them about it.
Well, Jesus, I mean, it's a classic musical. Why should they have to defend it? Oh, you're talking about the state.
I mean, if you've ever read Grapes of Wrath, you understand.
So no,
Oh,
but
that whole
because Oklahoma buys their textbooks from Texas. So like Texas textbooks have like all these great stories about Texas, and then Oklahoma buys textbooks from us.
That's so true.
Do you guys want the Italian question or the inevitability of death question?
Jesus.
Oh gosh.
They're related, unfortunately, all too often.
I know.
Oh man.
Okay. So how do you feel when it comes to Italian discrimination?
For it.
I've been a perpetrator. I
feel like,
think we need to get into more regional Italian.
Italians take that like racist jokes in better humor than most people because they know everybody secretly loves them. Like Italian men are stereotypically portrayed as handsome and funny and personable, and everybody loves their food, everybody loves their women. So they just kind of shrug it off because they know that it comes from a place of affection.
What in the sweet fuck are y'all talking about? Who's out there? Who's out there thinking bad shit about it?
I'd like to hear from the one Italian man here, Christoph.
What the fuck?
I'm an Italian Jew, which is an interesting combination. But yeah, we don't give a fuck, you know.
Wait, are there a lot of people out there hating on Italians?
There was like a social media thing.
It's not, you know. Everybody loves The Sopranos. Our chicks are cool. Our food's awesome. Like we're like, you know, we're great. We're not.
And if a giant turtle dragon kidnaps a princess, it's going to be an Italian who comes to the fucking rescue.
Actually, true heroes.
Working class Italian.
I have no idea.
I've never met an Italian person in my entire life. So
For all you know, they're fictional.
Italian. What the fuck are you talking about?
You're an honorary.
Okay, but Christoph, how do you feel about like really northern Italians, like Milan?
They don't count. They're not real Italians.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
They're like they might be. They're French. They're not. Real.
Yeah. No, I mean that's the thing with the boot. It's like, you know, it's if you at the cuff of the boot, you know, you're kind of in Germany, and at the tip of the boot, you're probably in Africa. But somewhere in the middle, that's Italian.
Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's enough questions. Okay, next up is TikTok famous Chandler Morrison. Actually, I have his book, one of his books. It's Along the Path of Torment. But his latest is Human Shaped Feeds from Death Heads Press. Actually, my attorney here is the one that told me to read him, and I was like, I don't know about this, but now he's here because I think he's a great writer. So everyone, here's Chandler.
I take a lot of pride in introducing these two. It's, you know, like my crowning achievement in life.
Thanks, guys. You really know how to make a guy feel warm and all right, I'm going to be reading a story called Burn Me to Ash. It's going to be put up on Expat Lit Journal in like a month or so, I think. If you're not familiar with them, check them out. They're doing some really great stuff online. Right. In the unmoving dark, your voice on my stereo, I can almost cry. The unshed tears sting like rejection. Your words are the invisible wounds on my back, red, gaping, weeping as I can't. I do this to myself because the pain feels like home in ways the city does not. Driving up Hyperion, the lights glittering in the black hills like promises unsaid, unbroken. I leave the car parked on the street in front of a sign I don't bother reading. My reflection watches from the dark mirrors of shop windows, a face like a skull, haunted, reproachful. Cigarette embers trailing behind me, dying empty deaths on the sidewalk. The sounds inside the bar are a solace, the clinking of glass, the pulse of music, the drone of so many voices saying nothing. All of it, it's almost enough to drown out the melancholic echo of your songs in my head, always in my head. From where I stand at the edge of the dance floor, I can turn any of the formless figures into you, mold them into the shape of what you'd been that night, gently swaying, dressed in white, the splash of red in your wine glass black as cancer in the dim light. I can make them all disappear until it's only you, alone, waiting. It's when they turn that the spell breaks, facing me with a face that isn't yours. It's then I realize I'm the one who's alone, who's waiting. If I shut my eyes, I can go back to that night when I'm walking across the dance floor and you're the girl who turns. Your smile like nightshade, the scent of you in my veins, the cool heat of your embrace. With my shuttered eyes, I can be there, soothed from my stricken solitude among this teeming mass of sweating bodies where none of them is you. That night, the dampness of your small hand in mine as we leave, the night wind whispering in your hair, your skin like Egyptian gold beneath the street lamps. Cars passing by on the boulevard, Stygian ferries chartered before a void which doesn't see us, doesn't want us. Maybe it did before and will again. But not then, not that night. Those other girls don't mean anything, you tell me in your bedroom, like it's a revelation, something I don't know. You're wasting your time with them. It was always supposed to be me. And I tell myself it's not the wine talking, even as I taste it on your lips. Tangled in your sheets and your limbs, your laughter as you tell me I'm wearing too many clothes, your hands unwrapping me, palms tracing the notches of my shrink-wrapped bones, my name upon your breath in my ear, the unspooled midnight of your hair wound through my fingers. I'd forgotten it could be like this, like music. You more than measure up, you tell me afterward. You take the cigarette from my mouth and it looks better in yours. I know that's a thing for writers, competing with the expectation you create with your books, the larger than life thing, the cool mystery. The column of ash you tap into the heart-shaped ashtray looks desolate and forlorn. That's why I don't sleep with fans, I tell you. Your easy laughter sound like childhood. I'm a fan. But you're not. It's too reductive a word for someone whose voice is on my stereo, in my head, always in my head. So then I have to open my eyes, return to now. If I keep them closed, stay there, remain in that night, it'll turn into the next morning. I'll see the coldness in your eyes, hear the hum of a rasp in your voice when you tell me what it was, what it really meant. The venom in your words when you say, I wanted to feel better about myself, to prove to myself I could get someone like you. I wanted to feel validated. It's not like you've never done the exact same thing. It's not like you're not always doing the same thing. God, don't be such a fucking girl about it. And so I return to now, where the bodies aren't you and the faces aren't yours, and there's nothing to do but leave. In the unmoving dark, your voice on my stereo tells me to burn you to ash. I look at my phone and I don't call you. I don't call you and tell you we're both already there, already ash. Thank you.
Very Baudelaire.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, if anyone has questions for Chandler, put it in the chat.
Very Chandler Morrison-esque, if you will.
Yes, yes. You could say that as well. That was beautiful.
Nothing if not predictable.
I prefer the term on brand, but you know, that's
yeah, I like that better.
Just while we have this moment here, is so anyone here coming to Portland for the thing in November? Autumn, you were saying you were going to, Christoph? I know your wife's pregnant.
Yeah, I'll be going.
Chandler, by any chance you can be here?
You know, my last foray into Portland didn't end well.
No, that's a reason you need to come back, dude. Anyone else? I mean, yeah, hit me up here in town.
It'll be a different crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll see. I'll think about it.
So next up is Marston Hefner. Are you ready?
Yes, testing.
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome.
So this is another writer that's new to me. I've heard some really great things. I actually have his collection in my inbox right now. And from what I've read, it's a very you have a very unique, idiosyncratic voice. It's intense and just a little bit angry. I really like it, and I'm interested in what you read. So everybody, welcome Marston.
Thank you for having me. This is for Christoph. So this is The Moon is a Tapestry, a Nightmare. The moon is a beautiful place. I think you'd like it there. There are many beautiful places I could take you, but no matter where you are, no matter where you go, there you are. You find yourself in that amazing place. So I take you to the moon, and there you are, with yourself and me and Elon. And even though the moon is very beautiful and very white, and it glows, and you wish you were someplace else still, someplace where you are not. So you fuck Elon on the moon. His brain brought us here, and I don't have Elon's sexual prowess or brain, which is now something you know. And I start to make a spaceship in the mess hall with paper cups and string, while you and Elon have sex and talk about feelings. And you walk into the mess hall as I'm building my ticket out of here. Right in front of me, you say, Elon fucks incredibly well and teaches you life lessons you wouldn't have otherwise learned. Right as I'm wondering if ketchup would be useful. Elon Musk has a bigger dick. It's also taller. It's better. And I tell you to stop being mean. I tell you that the things you need to stop are being mean and making me feel so lonely. I tell you I rescued you from the hate of the world, and I expected a sanctuary with you, and now I feel like an idiot. So the least you can do is be nice to me, because nobody is here but you and me and Elon. And at this you listen, because you hate yourself, so you end up making everyone hate you, because you hate yourself. So if Elon hates you, and you hate me, then you'll be left alone. And you know at some point you're going to screw up, and Elon will hate you, so you'll only have me. And if you don't accept me, you'll have no one. So I tell you, Elon has got to go. I tell you to imagine all the things you love in front of you, your books, your music, your orange light bulbs. Now imagine my face ripping through them, taking center stage, my smiling face, and that I have a boner, and that my penis being the new thing you love, being the survivor / murderer of your other favorite things. So you say you'd like to watch a horror movie with me, and I say, sure, I like horror movies. We watch a horror movie in the space station's theater room, and Elon comes in, and I pause the video, and I stare at him to let him know we don't want him here. He asks if he could speak to you, and I say you're a bit busy at the moment. And I turn back on the horror film, but Elon is autistic, and he doesn't know we want him to leave. He also doesn't understand what rejection is, so he says he wants to speak to you over the movie speakers, whose volume is very high. And I turn off the movie again. I tell him I'm very glad he brought us on the moon. We love it. We really do. It's so beautiful seeing the Earth from the viewing room, and the stars are much brighter and bigger here. There are a lot of good things about the moon, and I could go on about all of them for a couple of hours, but we're busy watching a movie, a horror movie, which is something we both enjoy. And I tell him that the most important thing is that we don't want him around, that you don't belong to anyone anymore. Now, Elon looked confused. He stood at the viewing room door and said nothing. And to help him understand, I compared your situation to space. I said that no one owns space, and that's what a woman is. That's what you are. And it was really a bad metaphor because Elon said, I own space. And I don't know how else to explain it. So I said, you weren't anyone's anymore. You were free, just like the sky. No one owns the sky. And you and I were watching a horror movie, and we didn't want him watching it with us because he didn't like horror movies anyways. And so Elon Musk says, I better leave. And I stand up and I move slowly towards him. Then I move fast to throw him off guard. I go to kick him, but Elon dodges much faster than I thought he could. I mean, I took Taekwondo when I was a child, but it looked like Elon took it just before he left for the moon. And I knew Elon was going to make me look like a fool. With one really fast punch, he knocked me in the face and my head ricocheted back. And then I guess Elon put his whole weight into a kick that hit my stomach and made me topple over. He said he didn't want me on his space station anymore. He said I was the owner of space, and you went over to him and he held your waist and you wrapped both your arms around him. So both of you were looking like a power couple with me on the ground. And I didn't feel like crying. I just wanted to get out of there because I looked so silly. I wish you understood that I had barely practiced Taekwondo and that my values didn't encompass self-defense anyways, because I was more of a mental dominator. And I wish that we agreed on that, the way we agreed with horror movies. But it was clear then you thought fighting was a very good thing to know. So I went to Earth alone. I went to home and I cried in my father's lap. I didn't have to tell him what happened. What father doesn't have that exact same story himself? I put my face in his lap, so my face was buried in his corduroys. His hand rested on my head, and here's what he said. He said, the world is very big and the moon is small. There are more women on the earth than there are on the moon. And when Elon and you break up, you'll be alone. The world had a lot of women on it, plenty of fish in the sea. I said I only wanted you. I said there was only one fish named you. And my father said that those in pain seek it out, do it to others and to themselves, that it was cyclical. But when you found your self-worth, then you'd come down to earth and live a normal life. Till then you'd get fucked by Elon, do drugs, get into trouble, be mean to people. And it'd all look cool and fun, but you wouldn't be happy. It'd be a show, and the pain wouldn't stop, not until you loved yourself. And I gripped his corduroys and I cried because it was cathartic. It felt good because it wasn't my fault. I looked at his lap and I saw my tears, and I said, I love you, Papa. I said, I'm glad you're always here. He pat my head. He invited me to stay at his house for as long as I wanted. So I did. I wanted to feel at home, and I did. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, good job.
Hey, everyone's been so good. I haven't had a chance to use the air horn.
Space.
If anyone has a question for Marston, put in the chat. You guys are bereft of questions today. Not curious, I see.
Yeah, you're all getting Fs for participation.
Okay.
Hot dogs are kind of sandwich.
So next up is S.A. Cosby. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here we go. So
All right.
let me intro you first, just a little bit.
Okay.
So okay, this is S.A. Cosby. I've known him for a while, just like on social media. You know, he was on, his book is on the Fallon Show, and he's like a best-selling author. But I mean, like now he's on my show, so like he's made it. So I really liked his first book, and I'm excited to read his second one. And here's S.A. Cosby.
Hey, thank you for having me. This has been a really cool event. I'm gonna read something I wrote a long time ago. This is called The Lion Tamer's Son. It's a dying art, you know. Leopold says this to me as I'm chopping up the chicken for the lions. I just grunt. I don't see anything artistic about chopping up 150 pounds of chicken for 3 giant cats that always look at me like they're wondering what I taste like. It's about 1,000,000 degrees outside, and I'm sweating like a whore in church sitting on the first pew. Leopold walks around the table to start loading the chicken into the 5-gallon buckets. He's the only one that actually feeds the lions. When he's performing, he wears this anachronistic safari outfit with this real like pith helmet. Today is his day off, so he's wearing a Kent State t-shirt and some cut-off sweats and flip-flops. His tawny skin is stretched tight across his bulky frame. His arms are like great slabs of meat hanging from a barrel. Years of cracking the whip and swinging a wooden chair had given him Popeye forearms. He wore his hair in a close crop, black crew cut. I was his apprentice and his son. I hated being the former and tolerated being the latter. We had a relationship more akin to employee and employer than father and son. My mother had run off with a roustabout when I was born. I think she was one of the first people to run away from the circus. My father, Leopold Carmine, raised me in a whirl of sawdust and tents, where the smell of popcorn mixed with the smell of goat shit. My playground was the safety net under the trapeze artist, or the stage where the strong man practiced bending his dummied up iron bars. At 16, my life consisted of blood and chicken parts and piles of lion scat. The magic, if it was some, of the circus was lost on me. I lived behind the curtain. I could see all the moving parts, except when it came to lion taming. I had no idea how my father did it. The whip and the chair were just props. I had seen him enter the lion cage and feed them by hand. I had watched him roughhouse with these 500-pound killing machines like they were kittens. He would tug on their luxuriant manes and pull their tails like they were a schoolgirl's pigtails. The lions never attacked him, never even seemed perturbed. Peter Kenton, the knife thrower for the circus, thought my father was crazy. Your dad is either the bravest man I've ever known or the biggest fool in the fucking world. He thinks those lions love him. They fear him. They fear the whip. I wouldn't want to be him the day they stop being afraid, Peter had said one night after a show. It's a lost art, I tell you, Leopold said. Peter and a bunch of granola eating, whole food shopping, so-called naturalists make the whole world think we treat these kings like shit. I've trained my whole life to enter that cage and ask those boys to help me make a living. Henri Martin, he was one of the first lion tamers. He didn't abuse his boys, and neither do I. It is an art, a skill to learn. You have to figure out what each boy wants and needs. You have to become his partner and his friend. You have to look in those eyes and see the power that they have and learn to harness it, to put away your fear and become a brother to these boys. It is an honor and a privilege. That's why I'm trying to teach you, Leon. I want you to take over from me one day. Be better than me. Make it all the way to the real big top. Be the next Gunther Gable Williams, he said. His eyes looked very, very far away and distant. There's nothing I wouldn't do for those boys. Well, how about I become the next Siegfried and Roy? I said. Leopold came up to me and cuffed me on the back of my head. It was just a glancing blow, but it felt like a brick had hit me. They are not lion tamers. They are prancing, preening clowns, and you never forget it. They're like children playing cowboys and Indians with real guns. One day, one of them is going to find their face on the floor. Mark my words. They don't respect their boys, and they don't know them. You don't have to make the boys fear you, but they must respect you, and you must respect them. When an animal feels disrespected, it will lash out, Leopold said sagely. I half listened. I was smarting from that slap upside my head, but I held my tongue. After what seemed like hours, I loaded all the chicken in the 10 5-gallon buckets, and then we loaded the buckets into 2 wheelbarrows. Then I made the 100-yard trip from the chop table behind the fortune teller's tent to the lion cages. The sun felt like it was 5 feet from my fucking face as I walked with that wheelbarrow. Sweat dripped down into my eyes, and rocks and other debris almost made me tip the whole contraption over more than once. Finally, I got to the cages. Each lion had his own cage, and each cage was 20 feet long and 16 feet wide. They were parked side by side, the tongues of the trailer pointing back to the midway. My father insisted that they each have the biggest cage possible. He also made sure their food was always fresh and their water was changed daily. And then he also walked them on a leash. The 3 of them heard me approaching and walked leisurely up to the bars. They moved with a quiet, unnerving power and confidence. The 3 of them watched me unload the buckets. I could feel their golden eyes upon me. Nero, Samson, and my father's favorite Rex staring at me, silent as death, not grunting or growling, just staring. How are my boys? My father yelled. His voice boomed behind me. I nearly jumped out of my skin. He was striding toward the cages with a huge smile on his face. He grabbed one of the buckets and went to Nero's cage first. Hey, my baby boy, how are you? You hungry? You hungry? He said as he opened the door on the side of the cage. My stomach always dropped down to my feet when he did that. I was always fearing the day when the lion pushed the door back, knocked my father down, and came and bit my head off. Nero scooted back against the bars of his cage and put his head down on the floor. He mewed low in his throat. Then my father took a piece of chicken out of the bucket and tossed it to him. Nero jumped up in the air and caught the chicken breast and swallowed it with one gulp. The cage shook as he came back to earth. My father took a raw chicken leg and put it in his mouth. Nero ran at him full speed. And then Leopold held up one hand. Nero stopped in his tracks. He wiggled his fingers, imploring Nero to come forward, and the huge cat came forward, one agonizingly slow step at a time. Finally, standing in front of my father, he popped back on his back legs and snatched the chicken out of Leopold's mouth. I didn't really know if it was art or magic or both. In an abstract way, I could dismiss what my father did to put food on our tiny table, but seeing it in action always left me, without fail, feeling like I was in the presence of the divine. My cynical 16-year-old mind called him a freak and an embarrassment behind his back, called him a lout and a slave driver. But subconsciously, deep down inside, I was in awe of his command of animals that could kill him on a whim. Leopold finished feeding the lions, and then he took them one by one for a walk, where I cleaned the random scat out of the cages that had piled up overnight. By the time I was done, my arms and back were twisted into knots of steel. Finally, we had all the 3 lions fed and walked and back in the cages with fresh water. All right, you can go do whatever it is you do, but be back here at the trailer by 6 p.m. to help me get ready for tonight's show, Leopold said as he petted Rex through the bars of his cage. He had his back toward me as he played with his favorite lion. 6 p.m. They gave me about 3 hours to find something to do. I didn't attend school. We moved around too much for that. I would sometimes take one of the work trucks and head to the local library of whatever town we were playing. I read a lot of fiction, some biographies, some books about history. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life yet, but I knew it wouldn't involve a cheap second-rate circus. I was walking toward one of the work trucks when I saw Aubrey walking across the field toward the midway. Aubrey was Peter Kenton's wife. She was 15 years younger than him and 7 years older than me. She was drinking an ice-cold bottle of root beer. Her full lips caressed the top of that bottle. Beads of sweat trickled down her brow. She was wearing some cut-off jean shorts and a white tank top, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. I quickly dropped my head and tried to ignore her as we passed each other under the heat of the sweltering sun. "Where you going, Leon?" she asked. Her voice had a light, lilting rhythm and a heavy southern accent. I'm going in town. Gonna try to find a library," I said, instantly regretting it. I sounded like a dweeb of biblical proportions. She smiled, sipped her root beer, then smiled at me again. "You know, there's a beach not too far from here. I saw it when we were coming into town. I think I remember where it was. God, it's so fucking hot. I'd love to go for a swim," she said. And as she spoke, she reached behind her head and let her hair fall down to her shoulders. I don't know," I mumbled. She sipped her root beer again. "Don't you think it'd be more fun than the library?" she said finally. I lost my virginity on a dirty, trash-covered beach in southeastern Virginia. I had no idea what I was doing, but I instantly knew I was addicted to sex in general and Aubrey in particular. We fucked and fucked and fucked again under the shade of a maple tree that was growing out of the side of an embankment near the beach. I felt like a starving man and her body was a banquet. "You don't think Peter's gonna find out about this, do you?" I gasped as we both collapsed on our backs and stretched out on the damp sand. "He wouldn't really mind. He likes to watch. I think he likes watching more than doing. He's one dirty old man, let me tell you, sugar," she said, laughing. Her laughter was like a song to me. Is there any bigger fool than a boy still in the flush inferno of his first real orgasm? The taste of her was still in my mouth, a pleasant saltiness that filled me with yearning. I rolled over and began to stroke her left breast. "Ah, sugar, don't start something you can't finish," she said, tugging at my long black hair and pulling my mouth to hers. We got back to the midway right at 6 p.m. I parked the truck and ran all the way to our trailer. It was a silver and blue Airstream hooked to my father's Ford F-150 truck. I reached to open the door, but it swung forward and almost hit me in the face. Leopold stepped out, already dressed in his safari suit. "Come on, we have to get the boys over to the main tent." "How was the library?" he asked. I thought you didn't care or know what I did, I said. Leopold walked past me and headed to the cages. Is that what you thought? He said. The show went off without a hitch. My father was brilliant as always. The trapeze artists, the clowns, the stunt BMX bikers, everyone hit their cues without fail. After the show was over and the last drunken local stumbled out of the big top, the performers would take down the booze in the cages and the rings. Some would retire to their trailers. Some would ride into town and find a bar. Others would sit out on the empty bleachers and drink moonshine out of a mason jar, smoke some weed in the back of one of the pickup trucks. Leopold always made sure the Lions was situated and comfortable before he retired to our trailer. Then he would read or drink alone in our tiny kitchenette. I usually tended to wander the grounds until I felt my eyelids get heavy. But tonight I found myself hanging out with Peter Kenton and Aubrey and Cokie the Clown and a midget named Uriel. Peter had one of those pull-out retractable shades on his trailer. We were all sitting around under the shade, passing a jar around. I listened to Cokie tell stories about the Barnum and Bailey Clown College and how he had been a star pupil until he punched out an instructor who had stolen his makeup pattern. Apparently, clowns take their makeup very seriously. Uriel told us about his time in the porn industry. As night wound down, Cokie and Uriel wandered away from our little quorum. Peter took a long swig from his mason jar. Well, we're gonna retire to the chalet. You coming inside, Leon? He slurred. He pawed at Aubrey's thigh like a blind man reading cuneiform. Seeing his old man hands on her made me want to vomit. You coming, Leon? Peter said again. There was something wicked in his voice that I both understood and wanted to forget. Huh? I said. Come on inside. I got something I want to share with you, Peter said. What? I'd heard him just fine, but I didn't want to. My moonshine. What did you think I meant? Peter said with a laugh. He was grinning like the Joker. Yeah, Leon. Come on and stay a while, Aubrey said. Nah, I gotta go, I whispered. As I made my way back to my father's trailer, the katydids and a few owls were singing midnight songs. I opened the door to find my father asleep at the kitchen table, an empty bottle of wine beside him. My mother's picture sat across from him in a shiny silver frame. She was smiling in that picture, but her eyes looked sad. They seemed to know the future, a future in which she fell out of love with my father, a future in which she abandoned her only son. I thought I could see the ghost of guilt behind those eyes. I wandered back to my cot and fell across it fully clothed. I told myself the tears stinging my eyes were just sand from the beach. The next morning was hellish. If anything, it was hotter today than it was yesterday. The lions needed food and the cage needed cleaning, and my head was swimming in this heat. I was on my way to the cages when a wide shadow fell over me. Hey, I don't want you hanging around with Peter Keene or his hot-in-the-pants wife anymore, my father said. You don't need to be in that trailer past midnight. I cursed him under my breath. Aubrey was fun. She was beautiful. And an old bastard like Peter Kenton didn't deserve her. I wasn't sure I deserved it either, but I knew Peter didn't. After we fed the lions, I went and wandered around the midway. A part of me wanted to go running around screaming Aubrey's name until she was in my arms, but I didn't. I just walked around trying to look like I wasn't looking for another man's wife. She was nowhere to be found. Finally, I just plopped down on an awning in front of the ring toss booth. I leaned my head back against the warm aluminum exterior. I had my eyes closed when I heard her voice. You look like somebody rode you hard and hung you up wet, she said with a laugh. Oh, yeah? That was the extent of my witty banter. She stood between me and the sun. A halo of light surrounded her head. She looked like an angel in dusty cowboy boots. Peter went into town, you know, she said in an offhand manner. My heart began to pound. Oh, yeah? I said again. I hoped I sounded nonchalant. Come to the back of the trailer in 10 minutes. The door's open, she said. Then she turned on her heel and sauntered away, her hips swaying to a tune that only I could hear. That was the longest 10 minutes of my life. When the last time drew near, I pulled myself up and I walked toward the Kenton's trailer. I wanted to run, but I made myself walk. I was tingling all over by the time my hand reached the knob on the back door. I went inside. The trailer was dark and cool. The AC was humming low and heavy. Aubrey was on the love seat, naked, her hands running up and down her body. You should get out of those clothes, she said. Her voice was husky and whiskey soaked. I got undressed so fast it could have been a magic trick. I was crazy. I can see that now. Crazy with lust and desire and anger and loneliness. I should have left the trailer. If I wasn't gonna leave, I should at least lock the door, but I didn't either. I dived into Aubrey like she was the ocean. That half second I went from trying to get inside her to being inside her was the most exquisite torture I've ever experienced. I went from feeling pain to feeling pleasure in an instant. She dug her nails into my back, and her body opened to me like a long ago locked safe that I had cracked with my nimble fingers. She shot her head forward like a snake and bit into my shoulders. Her legs shuddered around my waist. I still didn't know what I was doing, but I was doing it as hard and as fast as I could. I was lost in this magic land between her legs. I looked at her face, and it was beatific. Her eyes were wide open and staring into mine. A fantasy life unfolded in my head. Aubrey and I leaving the circus, settling down somewhere warm. Silly. I know that now, but aren't most of our ideas silly at 16 years old? Silly and dumb and innocent and wonderful. And then Peter Kenton came through the door of his trailer, and all hell broke loose. He had gone into town. However, he'd gotten in an argument with Cokie the Clown about where they were actually going to get something to eat, and had turned back around and came back to the trailer. You steal what's mine? I offered to share with you, and you want to steal it, you son of a bitch, Peter screamed. He began to rain blows down on my back until I fell off of Aubrey and onto the floor. Instinctively, I covered my head and my face with my arms, and Peter began to batter my arms and hands with heavy punches. Aubrey jumped up and grabbed at his arm, but he backhanded her almost absentmindedly. Grunting, she fell back on the love seat. Naked and bleeding and in pain, I was all set to curl up and take this ass beating. I was fucking another man's wife after all. But seeing him strike Aubrey filled me with a rage that nullified my pain. I hopped up and tackled Peter, throwing all my weight into him. I caught him off guard, and we both tumbled back to the floor. I had the upper hand, but only for a moment. I was strong, but only strong for a 16-year-old boy. Peter was strong in a way I didn't comprehend. Farm strong, working man strong. His anger-driven muscles pushed me off of him as like I was a sack of potatoes. And before I could get to my feet, he was up and grabbing me by my hair. Son of a bitch, just like your whoring-ass mama, he howled. He slammed my head into the door, and the white light filled my head. He slammed my head into the door again, and the inside of my mouth filled with blood. The third time he slammed my head into the door, it popped open, and I tumbled out and down the steps onto the dirt. I felt a knee in my back, and a hand pulled my head until my throat was exposed. The cool, wicked edge of a knife settled there against the hollow of my throat. I was tired and scared, and I think I was crying. Get off my boy, Peter, my father said. I opened my eyes, and there was Leopold, standing there in a white t-shirt and khaki shorts. He was barefoot and sweating. On his left side was Nero, and on his right side was Samson. Sometimes I forgot how huge they were. Nero's head was almost a bigger cross as my dad's chest was wide. Samson was a little bit smaller. I noticed through my bloodied vision that Nero's eyes were the lightest brown I'd ever seen, like drops of honey. Samson had green iridescent eyes, the color of fireflies. He fucked my wife, Peter growled. As if this would bring my father to his side and he would come over and hold my hair while Peter slit my neck. My father had his hands at his sides. He just shook his head slowly, sadly. I know, Peter, but you kind of brought this on yourself. You've been waving that girl on his nose for months now. What, you mad you didn't get to watch? My father said. Now I'm going to tell you again, get off my boy. Peter didn't move. My father raised his left hand and Nero roared. I felt the air from his lungs on my face. The roar rumbled through the entire camp, and Nero's fangs gleamed in the sunlight. Fuck my wife, Leo. In my own fucking house, Peter said. He's my son, Peter. He's my boy. She don't love you, man. She never has. Hell, she ain't really your wife. You just started calling her that. You let her fuck who she want to fuck as long as you get to watch and you think that makes her love you. You think you're controlling things. You think you're training her, but you ain't. And now you want to punish her by taking away something she likes. You can't train her like she's an animal, Pete. It don't work that way. Hurting my boy ain't gonna make her be true or love you more, but it won't matter anyway, because if you cut my boy, Nero and Samson will rip your fucking arms off before his blood hits the ground. So I'm gonna tell you one last time, get off my boy. Peter hesitated for a moment. Then he shoved my face in the dirt and got off my back. He went into his trailer and slammed the door behind him. Nero roared again, and this time Samson joined him in the cacophony. The boys had saved my life. Later, I was in our trailer laying on the couch. My father had taken the boys back to their cages, and I had a plastic baggie full of ice against my cheek. My father was sitting in a folding chair next to the couch. He took the bag away and pressed an index finger into my face. I trembled. I'll have Doc Hatton look at that in the morning, he said. He cleaned my wounds with warm water and alcohol. Ow, that hurts, I said. It should. Didn't I tell you to stay away from those two? But you young, dumb, and full of cum. Well, guess you're not so full anymore, are you? He said as he patted at my face with a wet rag. I tried to lay still. There was a question squirming on my tongue, and I wasn't going to be able to hold it much longer. Did Mama cheat on you like Arbor did with Peter? My father let out a deep sigh. You know, they call us lion tamers, but I don't really tame lions. I earn their trust. I become their equal, their confidant. I guess you could tame a lion. I mean, I guess you could try, but you can't tame people. You can try to train them. You can try to control them, but you can't never really tame them. They ain't meant to be tamed. They're wild at heart and wild in deeds, my father said. He cleared his throat. She isn't with that roustabout anymore, he said softly. He dabbed at my face again. You know, a full-grown male lion can eat up to 75 pounds in one sitting. In 2 days, it could probably eat a full-grown man. Wouldn't leave nothing but bones and maybe some skin, a scalp maybe, he said very quietly. He looked at me and dabbed in my face one more time, and he sighed again. I tried to tame your mama, and she tried to tame Rex, and we both were fools. What about Rex? I asked. That was his name, the roustabout, Rex. I named my boy after him, he said, as he stared at my mother's picture on the kitchen table. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, thank you. It's awesome.
Yes, indeed. I have to say that the line, one of the first people to run away from the circus is one of my favorite lines that I've ever heard. That was brilliant.
That was great.
That was so good. I love that.
That was great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Also, the surprise theme of tonight's readings is cuckolding. It's like every other story.
It's like every reading takes on a life of its own. Its own theme. Okay, so next up is Regina Watts. So I kind of asked her to send me a book on a whim because we were like on a show together, and you always hope it's like it was Industrial Divinity. See the camera. And it was like amazing. It was like classical and like splatterpunk. Like obviously someone who like understood like literature. Probably like the most like optimistic like gory book I've ever read. And I also have her other one that I haven't read, which was I was an OP demon lord before I got isekai to this boring corporate job. Version 1.
That one I'm just writing for money. Don't look at it.
No, yes. This one. This is
that's the arty one. Well, that was a very nice introduction. Thank you, buddy.
So yeah, everyone, welcome Regina.
Hi. Excuse the glasses and the glow in the glasses. I printed things out on paper. I'm analog here. So this is Beasts Bounding Through Time, Part 2, reference to a Bukowski poem. I got my third tattoo about 2 weeks after the abortion, maybe 3. I can't really remember. My recovery was veiled by a fugue state wherein I carefully collected the remains of my shattered ex-Catholic ego and put them together with an opioid glue. This being the merciless state of Arizona in 2015, the opioids were not a prescription for me, but rather a gift from a friend who had shepherded 2 other women to their procedures. You're going to need something stronger than what they're giving you, she remarked while presenting me with several Dilaudid dispensed by the VA and loaned to her by the veteran stepfather who, truth be told, might not have needed the drugs as much as he declared he did. I always think that, though. I'm probably just projecting. After all, I didn't really need them either, but I took them. The resulting karma left my bowels so bound up within a day that I thought the surgery had been botched. Really, I just hadn't shit in something like 36 hours. Accordingly, the rest of the amateur prescription was accompanied by the powdered chocolate taste of X-Lax, along with a general veneer of abdominal pain that sort of defeated the point of post-procedure opioids. All this is probably responsible for the tattoo. It was my second Bukowski quote, this time an entire poem. Art. As the spirit wanes, the form appears. While working at the mortuary and frequently consigned to the file vault where no one would have to deal with my personality, I listened to a combination of music and audiobooks typical for the young writer in her early 20s. William Burroughs' Naked Lunch, the David Sedaris essays I had once enjoyed with my mother on car trips, Pink Floyd's The Wall played over and over, day in and day out. Frequent among this rotation was Charles Bukowski, whose wide assortment of poems are captured in albums with a background of an immortalized audience almost as drunk as he is. The patron saint of the working depressive, Hank has always been there for me in a pinch, and I must have turned to him while reconciling my new reality as someone who had an abortion, a category I never conceived as a label applicable to me. At the time, I was managing the construction office of a window and door company. Despite our usually well-off clientele, the office was in a section of Tucson, not nice enough to be considered the north side, but still far enough from my apartment that I had to schlep a gnarly 45 minutes by bus every morning and afternoon. My boss, who seemed like the type of man who had funded more than one such procedure, had been generous enough to give me a week off when I took the chance to reveal to him why I needed the time. The following Monday, I reluctantly returned and worked in the robotic isolation of my new scarlet letter. The days passed on. The world had not ended, though it seemed physically farther from me than before. Even with the Dilaudid long gone, I felt nothing but the steady slipping away of the illusory control that provokes the immortality of the young. It had vanished once and for all. Even my body was not under my own control. All I remember about the tattoo in question was that I got it on a Wednesday, so the impulse was not tied to a paycheck or a weekend. That day was slow, and as I sat at my desk feeling like the ends of my nerves had been filed off, it occurred to me that if I did not do something to show myself my body was still somewhat mine, I was going to smash my head into the monitor of my work PC. There was a parlor 2 blocks down. What was that Bukowski poem I had truly heard for the first time only the night before? I got it done during lunch. The artist was still wiping sandwich crumbs from his fingers while we discussed my requests. All tattoo artists say the same things when you tell them you're getting a no-frills quote as the extent of your design. Just that? Typewriter font? Well, is everything spelled right? When it was finished, I realized I'd left my credit card at the office somehow. I had to leave my ID with him and book it back and forth to the company in blistering Tucson heat that made 2 blocks feel like 40 days in the desert. My new tattoo seemed to sweat beneath its plastic layer, but that was just melting aquifer. A cluster of warehouse guys on their break, oblivious to what it represented, praised the fresh ink while I hustled in and out of the back doors to our strip mall office. Incredibly, I still made it back by lunch's end. That evening, I came home and showed my boyfriend. Isn't it great? I'm really happy with it, a whole poem. Oh, nice, he said in a tone of semi-pleasant surprise, himself the bearer of a wrench, a skull, and a starburst. He took my forearm in his hands and read the freshly inked words. Just so, his expression changed. He looked at me in such a weird way, I might as well have started talking about the Marquis de Sade in front of his ancient Russian mother. Only as I puzzled over that weird look did I consciously remember my own boyfriend's name was Art. Not long after that, I quit the construction company. No one who gets a tattoo while in a trance state should be trusted placing window orders, and the company was very understanding. I even got a severance package, mostly because when some disciplinary conversation about my slowly degrading work attitude turned into me bursting into tears and quitting on the spot, my manager felt bad for me. Still, a tool is a tool. Staying home was far from the ideal situation at the time. Art's apartment was a squalid little studio, which, before I moved in, had mostly functioned as a garage for his unregistered motorcycle. After I moved in, it became a depressing storage facility for my life. For all I know, it still is. When I fled the state, I left behind the bookshelves, the old bed, and the dying cat named Benedict, whom Art promised to euthanize respectfully when he could afford to. To my greater trauma, I learned later still that Art cut the dying cat's head off. I suppose I should consider it recompense for unlived family life. Much as the symbol of the tattoo seems to represent a universe evaded, Benedict's sickly decline before his violent demise now feels a willful act on his part, the sacrificial means by which I evaded that shorter, uglier universe. As happened to Philip K. Dick, a cat took on the burden of death so that I did not have to. At the time when I began staying home, however, I did not even realize Benedict was sick. By then it was June, and I was still waiting for my first post-procedure period. Art had scheduled a vasectomy in an attempt to placate me, but it was futile. Now, in addition to being horribly empty while I stood in that purgatory between lapsed Catholicism and what would eventually prove to be occultism, I was working with a finite amount of money. My first novel was finished and in need of an editor and a cover and a lot of other things I had no idea about at the time. Then there was the weed problem. Theoretically, pot should have been a simple matter for me. At the time, it was medically legal in the state of Arizona, but medical licenses were, to me, forbiddingly expensive, and going to the dispensary safely required a car to drive in. Art had a car, and I didn't, but by the time I was with him, there was no question that I was too poor to afford boutique strains sold by hipsters with ear gauges the size of my cat's skull. So, while he continued going back and forth to the window company where he still worked as an assistant on a construction crew, I stayed home and did the economically responsible thing. I began a career in ghostwriting, lubricated not by cannabis, but by $7 bottles of barefoot wine procured from a local convenience store. Stephen King can talk all he wants about having no memory of Cujo. I have no memory of any of the 8, or was it 9, novels I wrote for a handful of clients from June of 2015 to January of 2016. The books were trash and they paid a pittance at $500 for 50,000 words, but to say it was all unpleasant would be untrue. This was the first time I was ever paid by and paying with my writing. Between that and the hard work involved in publishing my first novel, my days began to hold a certain optimistic sheen. The nightmares, however, were intolerable. They were different every night and occasionally interspersed with dreams that were just vivid rather than stressful. But as the THC vanished from my body and my brain once again became capable of REM, sleep developed into a punishment. After 2 months of night terrors, peaking in the ominous symbol of Benedict, Art, and myself, all in the path of a great black cyclone pulling up houses in the distance, I walked down to the nearest ATM, took out 100 of my carefully earned writing dollars, and pushed the money into Art's hands as soon as he got home that day. "You know people," I said, almost begging him. "You know more people than me. I can't stand it anymore. Get me some weed. Somebody here's got to have some." The friend who was my usual connection for cheap bud, the Dilaudid friend, didn't have access because hardly anybody had access that season. Christmas weed had come and gone long before, and that year had been painfully dry, and what was a contributing factor behind my decision to lean on cheap wine. But if there's one thing that's true in life, it's that even in the driest counties at the driest times, somebody somewhere has weed to sell to someone else. I'd lived in Tucson for about 4 years by that point, but still hadn't managed to develop a broad enough social circle to permit me to make new connections. Art did not smoke pot and in fact tended to disapprove of my habit, but he ran with drug-using circles who could help me. Besides, he wasn't the one dealing with nightmares. I was. Saturday, he was gone for a few hours while I stayed at home working on an assignment. When he came in, it was through the back door, or side door, depending on how you oriented yourself in our palatial box. "I didn't get an ounce," he began defensively, "but I think I got something better." Some rooting around in his leather coat yielded a disposable baggie he held for my inspection. Little yellow smiley faces pressed to the plastic from dark pink backgrounds printed on the blotter paper. I'm not an addict to any particular drug so much as to altered states of consciousness, and acid produces what is still one of the most compelling states for me to think and work in. After my first trip with Art and all its euphoric inspirations, I thought incessantly about when I would be able to do it again. The tangy chemical smell of sweat after imbibing, the high vibration intensity of the human body while the mind flies, the immediate creative boosts to all my projects. I was eager to re-experience it as soon as I could. Art was in less of a hurry, however. 10 years my senior, he had experienced the novelty of acid a number of times before and sensibly encouraged me to take it slow, though I could see changes had occurred in him too. He was more distant in the week after the trip and had gotten into the habit of spending long hours after work at the local coffee shop or elsewhere. I didn't know and was already by then beginning to get to a point where I didn't care. And then he went out of town for an overnight job. His work trip came about a week and a half after our acid trip, and I was excited for him to leave. The little tabs of acid in the bin on the bookshelf were calling my name, and I gave it until about noon in case a window had been ordered wrong and the job was cut short. When I was through with work and sure he wasn't coming back, I retrieved the collection of blotters from their clutter. Feeling a combination of duplicity and uncertainty, I removed one of the blotters from the baggie and turned it over on my finger. Seeing photographs of the things gives the false impression that they are perhaps the size of postage stamps. In reality, they are less than a quarter of that. Tiny little scraps of paper easily lost in the couch. I hurriedly swallowed one and zipped the bag up before I could change my mind. Then, trembling with anticipation, I returned it to the bookshelf, where I was given pause. A vial of crystals had evidently been sitting beneath the acid. How does one determine whether something is methamphetamine when one has no drug testing kit and absolutely no desire to indulge in the chemical themselves? Context is a good clue. I knew that Art once had a speed problem, though he had claimed it was long finished. I also knew better than that, but denial is among the most powerful forces of the human mind. Deciding in irritation there was an obvious solution, I reminded myself that meth was technically a series of decongestants and fetched a credit card. After knocking off the tip of one crystal spear, I thought back to college and cut up a microscopic amount. Then, hoping I wouldn't die from whatever it really was, I took a sharp but tiny sniff. Amid the burning that taught me why it's called glass, my sinuses cleared. The anger that surged through me at the confirmation was so great that any hope of an acid trip vanished. It was like the LSD couldn't get it up in the face of my fury, nor did the amphetamine, which I coldly returned to its half-acid hiding place, have any effect other than improving my ability to breathe for a few hours. The month was September, among Tucson's hottest. My cat was beginning to reject food. The boyfriend whose abortion I'd had was back on meth. Bukowski's big hand, stained with nicotine, stretched from the past to rest on my shoulder. As the spirit wanes, drawled his somehow ill-fit, almost effeminate voice, the form appears. Quiet with fury, shattered by the weight of the year, I opened my laptop and composed an email. I need to get out of Tucson, announced the opening line of a correspondence that would continue about 2 months before actual plans were made. I think I am having the worst year of my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Bukowski would be very proud of you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
That was really good. I enjoyed that a lot.
Thank you.
So I think we're going to take a break for a couple minutes. I might skip the Q&A because we're kind of like running behind on schedule and I don't want people to have to stay too late. We'll fill it out.
Okay.
All right.
We still have 21 people on Twitch, 22 people now who are watching us. So
wow.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody. That's exciting.
it's really good.
It's really disorienting with like the Twitch because it's like a few seconds behind. So it's like
I know,
weird
it's
having
really
it in
weird.
The other one.
When I initially came in, my Zoom was scaled improperly, so I was having to look at Twitch to like see people's faces, and it was really like I couldn't look at it too closely. It was making me feel like I was tripping. I was like, this is not good.
What I really like is Regina, your hand is like really close to the camera, so like every
I'm
time
sorry.
you're like doing no, it's great. I love that. You're like doing this. The entire
I'm weaving my web.
Exactly. Thank you, Peter. All right.
Aw. Chandler dropped before I could thank him for his nice DM. That's too bad.
Oh.
Yeah, but I got nice praise. It was so, but that's okay. Man, everybody here is so great. I'm so flattered to be among these writers. This is just such a good time. Jeez.
You all make me want to write more. So yeah. I'm just a moderator. I don't write much, but you know, yeah.
I think it's a good vibe to hang around a bunch of writers if you do want to write. It's like the option is always there, you know. It's always hanging out. You can just reach out and take it. Just take it. Oh, Farah, thank you for being here. Everyone's dipping out. I'm glad they at least waited for the second half. It's like people leaving, right after communion, right before the end of church. Now that the important part is over, we're gonna sneak out. And by
Makes me
important
feel
part,
great.
we mean our parts. Don't worry, Alex. I'm still here for you. We're all still here for you.
I know Peter's reading after the break, so and other people.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's kind of a long reading. I kind of overbooked because I didn't expect everyone to show up, but they did.
Cool.
So
Real quick, Brian Allen Carr, when you read your thing, you said that has not been released yet or has not been published yet, but you're going to do that maybe on Clash?
Yeah.
Okay. Good answer.
Yeah, it's not done yet though. So, but I think that's the game plan right now.
All right. Yeah. Well, I think you should. Christoph and Lisa put out some good shit. So.
Oh yeah, no, they're
like that, but
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. The hesitancy wouldn't be about class; it'd be about whether or not the book's done. Yeah, I mean, if
you read it's fucking amazing. So yeah, do it. Put it on Clash.
Yeah. I mean, that's the game plan. Like, I feel like what they're doing is the coolest shit going on.
One of the last few small presses that I know that are like legit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, it's publishers are tough in that regard. It's like some of them are amazing and some of them are hampering but no, what Lisa and Christoph do are they're badasses, man. They're badasses.
Well, I've not read anything from them that I haven't liked. I think it was Girl Like a Bomb that I first read was the first Clash book. And
who wrote that one? I can't remember. I'm just kidding.
Her name is Sally Johnson.
Don't make me use the air horn.
I literally called my mom in the middle of reading that book, and my mom's like, "Hi, honey, how you doing?" I said, "I'm 43 years old. I think I'm reading erotica." And she goes, "Oh, honey, do you need me left alone?" I was like, "No, let me tell you about this book." But it's like, yeah, it's fucking great. So
I told my family they weren't allowed to read it, and they did anyways. So I'm like, and then they're like,
that was the.
I'm like, I told you.
I think I said this in my review on Goodreads, where I was like, "This is the first time I've ever read or seen something where sex moves the plot and not the other way around." It was like that was fucking really great for me. I mean, normally when I see sex scenes, I'm like that takes it away, but no, this is like added to it. So yeah,
I think the book's good.
You should. You released it, motherfucker. You should.
It is.
I like books.
I love that book. I love that book.
I like to.
It's okay. No. That was Autumn. That was your most fluid book.
Sorry, Peter just disconnected. I don't know what happened.
Oh. No, what I mean is like that's your most understandable book. If you will. All right.
I was less angry.
Exactly.
Anger is powerful, but also limits your
incoherent. Yeah.
This has been one of the best readings I've seen, and I've done a lot of these, and I hate readings at this point because it's like it feels like work because I edit, but this is like one of the few times I'm like, this is fucking enjoyable. This is a really good reading. So
yeah, I really just want people to have fun and hang out a little bit, but
it's super
we're
fun.
gonna read in 3 minutes.
Oh yeah. This is my first reading since college, so thank you for inviting me, dude. This is great. Good
Regina,
to be here.
Really good. You did
really good.
I'm getting addicted to cigarettes.
Dude, you don't do that.
For the bit. I just don't inhale.
Those Robert cigarettes?
Clinton.
Yeah, they're Roberts. He smokes like a pack a week.
And that guy.
He's like, "Are you gonna smoke in the house?" I'm like, "Just one." Okay. Waiting for Christoph to get back. Yes.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, you're here. Okay. Let me put this out. Okay, next up is Peter Clines. I have one of his books here. It's Paradox Bound. But your latest that came out was actually Terminus, right? You're muted.
I am. I should unmute, so my
Okay.
answers make more sense. Yes, Terminus was my latest.
Okay. So yeah, I met Peter because I was like, why is this guy like harassing me on Twitter constantly? But he's not as creepy in person. And I'm really happy he's here to read. So here's Peter.
This should be my bio, not as creepy in person. So thanks for that wonderful intro. I have two things I've brought to read. One is a short story, which I always do at these little things at readings because it's a guaranteed crowd pleaser. And the other one is a new book that I wrote over the pandemic, which I will read as much of as Autumn allows me before shutting me down. So
Can I use the air horn?
I'd really prefer you don't.
Okay.
You could scream air horn.
Thanks.
really
Like
loud.
never let me have any fun. Okay.
Just do it.
So short story. This is called Red Necromancy. The tiny farmhouse hadn't changed much since his last visit. Richie saw a few new furs on the bed, some new dog-eared paperbacks up on the mantle. A battered boombox with both cassette doors missing had replaced the transistor radio. In the kitchen corner, Big Bo was making dinner by lamplight. The butter knife looked tiny in his clumsy hands. His other half-cousin Ezra leaned back in Uncle Zeke's old rocking chair. "How much money you making so far, Richie, now you a big college man?" "Nothing yet," he shrugged. "Just got my associate degree last week. I'm still looking for a job." "Thought you had a job." "Nah, I just did pizzas while I was in school to pay for books and stuff." "So you got some money?" Richie shrugged again. "Well, some, yeah." "Enough to buy a tractor?" "A what?" "Not a big one," said Ezra. "Just one of them little ones, like a little lawnmower you drive. You know what I mean?" His hands turned an invisible steering wheel back and forth. Richie shook his head. "Yeah, nah, ain't got enough for that." "Damn," said Ezra. "That's too bad." "What do you need one for anyway? Billy's still got a couple years left in her." He looked out the window to the Plymouth barn. Ezra sighed and shook his head. "Nah, she don't. She's dead." "Dead? What happened?" "Funny story." His half-cousin settled back in the rocking chair and it creaked on the farmhouse floorboards. "A few months back, the cow died. Got herself all tangled in the wire fence and poked herself in a nail that was sticking out. Just a little hole, but she was caught and tore it more and more. Bo reckons it probably took her an hour to bleed out everything and die." Bo nodded inside as he set down the plate of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and a pitcher of milk. "Damn, Ezra, that's awful. Ain't it? We were selling 10, 12 gallons a week to the neighbors. So we used out our own milk and feed money to boot, and Bo and me was all upset. Then we remembered great-grandpa's books up in the attic." Ezra stretched back in the rocking chair and pointed at the sheet of plywood over the kitchen, stretched between two thick beams. Boxes, bags, and blankets were piled to the roof and threatened to avalanche at the slightest touch. "Which books?" "Them black magic ones Auntie Helen beat us up for looking at that one time. You remember that?" "Maybe. Anyway, Bo remembered seeing a spell was for raising the dead. So we went up in the attic and got the books, and we spent all week trying to read them. Bo, he reckoned he got most of it. It was a for people spell, but we reckoned it'd work good for cows, too." Richie leaned forward on his bench. "So what you do?" "Well, we took the rooster out to the paddock and lit some candles and slit its throat with Daddy's old straight razor. Bo held it upside down so it spread its blood around when it thrashed, and I read the words best as I could. They was all from Araby or Chinese or something." He drew squiggles in the air with his fingertips. "And what happened?" "Cow got up, kind of flipped her ears, and went back to munching grass." Richie blinked once, hard. "For real?" "For real," his cousin nodded. "Her milk tastes kind of funny. Takes some getting used to, but we got used to it. So did some of the neighbors. but some say it's spoiled. We say, how can it be spoiled if it just came out of the cow? Bo spit out a laugh between a mouthful of peanut butter and held up a glass of gray milk. So what happened to Billy the mare? Well, see, now we ain't got no rooster, explained his cousin. So we was always overslept. Plus all the hens was acting uppity, no eggs. So Bo got the books out of the attic again, and we took Flip out in the yard. Flip? He looked down at the old beagle curled up next to the fireplace. The dog opened a sleepy eye to glance at him for a moment and yawned. No, we had a plan. See, we needed Flip because it had to be wolf's blood. Flip really weren't a wolf, but Bo remembered Mutts was all evolutionized from wolves, so he reckoned that'd be close enough. Great-grandpa's books was written before evolution was created anyway. Wait, said the younger man, so you killed Flip just to bring back a scrawny rooster? I'm not stupid, Richie, growled Ezra. He reached down to scratch the dog's head and Flip's tail pounded on the floor. I love the old mutt too. Made sure the razor was good and stropped so it didn't feel a thing. Then, soon as the rooster up again, we took Flip out to the pasture and that's when we got Billy. It had to be Billy because you need the blood of a strong heart to bring back a loved one. And she was a horse. You don't get no stronger than that. She was calm-like and we got the candles all lit again. Bo tipped one and the grass started burning, but we got it out and cut her and that was that. He rubbed his eyes. So you're what killed Billy? We had to. How was we supposed to get Flip back? He shook his head and gave the mud another scratch. The dog looked up with loving cloudy eyes and the long gash in its throat flopped in time with the tail thumps. Jesus, Mary and Joseph, I thought you was educated now. Richie shook his head. This is just all very sudden to me. I know. We tried to reckon what to do next. First planting came up and it took us forever and a day to get the corns and potatoes done without Billy. Now we only got a week till pumpkins and squash need to be in the new patch and we still got another 5 stumps to pull. He cocked his head at his cousin. You sure we ain't get the money for a tractor? It'd make things a lot easier for us. I wish I did, Ezra. Wish I did. Ah, I know it, he said with a nod to Bo. I wish you did too. Damn shame. Big Bo's hand slapped down onto Richie's shoulders, holding him down on the bench. Ezra rocked himself out of the chair and slid Daddy's old straight razor from his back pocket. Still, you picked a good time to visit, cousin. Now just hold still and we'll have Billy walking around again by sunup. Finish. That's the crowd pleaser.
Yeah, that was great. So are you going to read from your book?
If I have time, do you think if it would need to?
Yeah, I think you've only been reading a couple minutes.
Have I? I'm going to be honest. I've been drinking, so my time sense is a little off right now.
Yeah, I mean, like who hasn't been drinking?
Yeah.
Oh, phew, now I feel better.
Well, no, I've been drinking Red Bull, but.
I've been drinking massive margaritas. Okay, cool. So this is a new book that like I said, I wrote over the pandemic called The Broken Room, which I actually sold yesterday. And we just sort of nailed everything down for that.
Congratulations.
So I will read this until Autumn tells me to shut up. So this is The Broken Room.
I think the first chapter would be good.
First chapter? Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so Broken Room, part 1, a girl walks into a bar. 1. If a dive bar had family, the pharaoh would have been the red-headed stepchild, or the black sheep, possibly both. The story went that 16 years ago when it first opened, it was supposed to be the pharaoh, but the sign painter messed up and the original owners just didn't care enough to go back up and add a vertical line with some red paint. The pharaoh was on its 4th owner now, and each one had cared about the name a little less than the last one. Hector didn't care about the name at all. He'd chosen the bar for the same reasons he chose most places. Cheap booze, low lighting, limited entrances and exits, probably a fire code violation, but Hector didn't care about that either. At least 3 booths shallow enough not to get trapped in, which also gave direct line of sight to the main entrance and the back room swinging door. And right now, out of these things, the only one he cared about was the cheap booze. Over the past 2.5 years, Hector's days had fallen into a nice, simple schedule. He got up with the sun, showered, grabbed a breakfast burrito from one, chosen at random, of the 4 hole-in-the-wall places within a block of his studio apartment. Then he sat on a bus or train station bench, also chosen at random, and ate the burrito. Sometimes, if said form of public transport came while he sat there, he'd pay cash and ride it for an hour or 2. Hector paid cash for everything. One way or another, at 12:30 noon, he walked into the Pharaoh just after they unlocked the doors. Then his day really began with a drink in one of the 3 booths with direct line of sight to the main entrance and the back room swinging door. Sometimes he let one drink sit for hours, sipping at it as the ice turned to water in the yellow double rocks glass. Other times he'd kill an entire bottle before dinner. It all depended on how he'd slept the night before. Usually he killed the bottle. Today had been a rare day so far. Almost 4 in the afternoon, and he'd only had 3 drinks. The whiskey gave the bar a soft edge, rubbing at the shadows like a charcoal artist. It had been overall a peaceful day, internally and externally, the first one Hector had experienced in at least 2 months. He raised his hand, signaled Stu at the bar for a 4th drink, and the girl walked in. Hector assessed her, like he did everyone who stepped through the big swath of afternoon sunlight and paused to let their eyes adjust. He didn't dismiss her because of her clothes. Every item was new. Superhero t-shirt, jeans, red and blue sneakers, sweatshirt, denim jacket, school backpack, and a sparkly sequin-covered baseball cap declaring unicorns rule. Lower-end stuff, but all of it new, barely broken at all. Despite the hat, because of it really, he was also pretty sure the outfit had been picked to blend into a crowd, to let attention slide off the girl. His attention didn't slide. He put her weight at 53 pounds, 4'4", short dark hair peeking out from under the cap, closer to a crew cut than a pixie. A decent amount of Latino heritage, like himself. Slightly malnourished, she was 12 tops. She blinked twice and looked back and forth across the room. Stu stepped around the bar, holding a glass of liquid amber, and pointed himself at Hector's table. "What do you want, kid?" The girl looked at him and blinked again. For a moment, Hector thought she didn't understand the man. Then she shook her head and said, "Nothing," in a voice like a stage whisper. "Bathrooms for customers only, and you're too young to be a customer." He stepped past her and delivered Hector's drink to the booth. Hector nodded his appreciation, but didn't take his eyes off the girl. She turned her head, pointing her eyes at each of the 7 afternoon patrons. She paused at Hector, then settled on a guy at a tall table near the bar. Hector had never spoken to the man, but eavesdropping an observation had taught him Jorge worked as a security guard at one of LA's many film studios and was freshly divorced after he caught his wife cheating on him. The girl walked in a wide arc, circled Jorge, and parked herself at the table across from him. She was 2/3 turned from Hector, so he could see her jaw and mouth move, but couldn't read her lips. He watched Jorge's expression. The security guard shook his head, then looked back over his shoulder to the bartender. "Kid!" Stu's voice hit the loud, slow pitch people thought somehow translated across all languages. "You can't be in here, so get out before I call your parents." She ignored him and walked a beeline across the bar to Hector's booth. He sipped his drink and stared at her. She stared back. "Hello. What's up, kid? Are you Hector Ramirez?" His eyes or hands never moved, but something tickled the back of his neck. He hadn't been Hector Ramirez in at least 6 years. He'd even destroyed the Ramirez passport, license, and other docs. Standard procedure. "Name sounds familiar," he said. "Why are you looking for him?" She set her hands on the table and balled them into tiny fists. "Are you him?" He lifted his glass, let his drink touch the tip of his tongue. "Didn't your mother ever teach you it's rude to answer a question with a question?" "My mother's dead, and my father." Her lips kept moving, forming silent words as she stared. He flinched. "Sorry, kid." "You are him," she said. No, not said, stated. Whatever doubt had been in her voice had vanished like smoke in a hurricane. She knew. "Maybe," he set his glass down. "You are," she repeated. "You're supposed to help me." "Am I?" "Yes." "Are you selling band candy or something? Girl Scout cookies?" She stared at him as her head pivoted back and forth, left side up, right side up, back to center. "I don't know what band candy is." There was an odd cadence and tone to the words, to all her words. Hector recognized it from a few different places around the world. She hadn't been taught English. She'd picked it up, learning random words here and there from different people. "Candy for your school band," he said. "You know, musical band, you'd sell the candy to pay for uniforms or trips to DC or drum skins or something." "Oh," she said, clearly not having any idea what he was talking about. "I'm not selling band candy." "So what's up?" The girl slid into the booth across from him and laced her fingers together on the tabletop. "I'm being pursued by 2 standard 2-man retrieval teams with a tactical support team on standby. I think I've lost them, but I know they followed me here to Los Angeles. They want to take me back to the project." He'd been reaching to pick up the drink again. Instead, he set his palm flat against the cheap Formica. The tickle on the back of his neck grew into an itch that spread down his spine like a rash. "Hey," Stu called out. "You know that kid? She begging for money?" No, Hector said, still not taking his eyes off the girl. I have plenty of money, she said with a nod. Who are you? Natalie Gamma 16. Gamma 16? Yes. What kind of a name is that? It's my group designation. There were 35 of us in each group. He set these facts at the side of his mental desktop, somewhere he could grab them quickly if he needed them. But what's your name? Natalie Gamma 16. Your real name? I don't know anymore. The drink called to him, but the back of his neck buzzed hard, the way it used to. Who said I'd help you? A friend of yours? You'll have to do better than that. Her head did the side-to-side thing again. I don't know what that means. It means you can't just say a friend. You have to give me a real name. Timothy Stiers. He said you'd help me. He told me where you'd be. A chill blotted the itch for a moment as he processed the name. Heat replaced the chill, annoyance, a bit of anger, a generous amount of suspicion. Hector hit it all. He'd been trained to hide sudden emotions. Really? Tim Stiers sent you? Yes, he said you'd help me. He reached out with one finger and caught a drop of condensation as it rolled down the outside of the glass. His eyes had never left the girl, but his attention was on the exits now. Did he? When did he say this? He told me about you for the first time 8 days ago, just before I escaped. He said you'd be able to help me and that you would. Hector flicked the drop from his fingertip. See, that strikes me as odd. Why? Because according to everything I've heard, Tim Stiers died 7 years ago. Across the table, the girl's shoulders sagged beneath her backpack straps. Yes, this is good. What is? You already know. He thought you might take it hard. Take what hard? Finding out he was dead, said Natalie Gamma 16. We were worried I'd have to tell you.
Bravo, that's a compelling opening chapter, my friend. Really grabs you.
Yeah, I'm excited for this book to come out. I'm glad it's sold.
Yeah, that's
I am
so
too.
great.
You're like, I like money.
I like money. I like paying my mortgage.
Makes a difference.
Thank you.
Oh, that's cool.
Sam, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, next up is Sam Heaps. This is another writer who's new to me. I've heard some really good things. She has a book coming out with Clash next year, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and from what I've read from her, it's just really like a unique voice. You'll have to hear her to understand what I'm saying. But everyone, welcome Sam.
Welcome, Sam. Welcome.
Thank you.
Wait,
Hi.
why do I have two people in Spotlight?
What have you done?
No, there we go. Okay.
All right. Yeah, it's a little late. It's a little past. I'm old and I'm on the East Coast, so bear with me. But this is an excerpt from my upcoming essay collection coming out from Clash. And thanks for having me. And it's a series of 94 letters to a man named A. We're starting with 94. 94. As soon as you're in the apartment, just coiled against each other, you hold my feet, massaging. I run my hands along your back over and over, drinking up the skin around a raised tattoo. Your face buried in me from behind, you run your tongue up from my clit and around the rim of my ass. The intimacy is enormous, as if we are well-known lovers when we've never met before, when we have never spoken before an hour earlier. We're starving though, and it seems worth almost anything, the feeling of flesh. The neighbors across the alley have a balcony on which they sun. Throughout the quarantine, their windows face mine and I watch their daily lives. The man works in the kitchen, the woman in the bedroom. She has wide hips that sometimes he grips with affection as she passes him. Together they eat pasta for lunch. I can smell the boiling starches, herbs and spices, at night smoking weed. They laugh together with easy frequency, laugh loud. The blinds are never lowered as if they are performing for me so that I might know how much I am lacking. The woman sometimes will toe the fourth wall, meeting my blue eyes with hers, almost the same shade. I have a dream about you, A. You tie me up the way you sometimes bind your wife, but so loose my limbs and skin have to grow, inflate, to reach the intricate restraints. I can see you over my shoulder stroking yourself, but you will not give me what I want as I continue to thicken. I tell you I don't like the game, vulnerable like this, and I'm not as pretty as she is in the shape. So hungry, growing bigger still but with emptiness. You open an incision with a sharpened fingernail from your wrist to the inside of your elbow, a dirty fingernail. In a photo, your wife has dirt beneath her nails, unclean. You open the wound with her stained fingers which sprout from your body, widening so that I am allowed to lap up the blood with my kitten tongue while you grip at your cock. And I wake naked and alone in the empty bed, a used condom next to the pillow. I come, I cry. 45. Right before it is over, you say when we're 50, if we're both single, let's move into a house together. I'll get fat, you'll get too thin. This is how it is with us, all ups, downs, white, black, both so lonely, angry, and desperate, willing to throw everything away for anything. Perhaps we resent one another, this state mirrored. You tell me the first time that our love affair was grand, but I've forgotten you existed. Who else is running through my life without my having any memory of them? In anticipation of this silly little project, or maybe to try and make sense of the passing time, I'm very nervous, sorry. I'm skipping things, Thank you.
Great.
I cover my walls with brown paper and begin an inventory. Here it becomes tricky though. Do I include someone I love but did not fuck? Do I include fucks whose names I don't remember? Do I include emotional affairs and flirtations and young crushes? I'm sitting on hot black asphalt under the Idaho stars. I decide ultimately to include, I'm compelled to include, and hope that intuition itself will create a system of classification through which to sort a life. The last time together we settle into our old shape. You rest your head in my lap and I stroke back your hair, the familiar smell of your cologne and the musty scalp beneath. When I attempt to instigate more, you say it is time for you to go. I'm petty without words, juvenile, and I pout at your rejection. I turn from you. You leave without saying goodbye, without locking the door behind you. That's all. 26. Two male friends engaged in conversation with younger women, and I'm sitting alone at the bar, and an older man slips his hand on my leg and all the way up my thigh. I just sit there like that, pretending nothing is happening at all until either he walks away or the boys rejoin me. 39. Talking sometimes on our balconies. Maybe once I've forgotten my key and I walk you to your room to get you through my sliding door. Someone implies that you may watch me. Perhaps you witnessed my madness. I also never close my blinds. A. I wonder every day if I had been more beautiful, if I had been more stable, if I had been less desperate and sniveling, if then you would have wanted me. You say it doesn't matter, that no form or shape of me would have been good enough to have a place in your life. But still, I wonder. You open the door and you are magnificent. Your wife, always when I arrive, she manages to be walking down the stairs like an heiress. Her fully silver hair and the glow of her perfect complexion, thin fingered hands that are soft, but now I know with a secret juxtaposition. Was I hoping that she would have a visible paunch? Was I hoping she would be fat from the pregnancy, not full and glowing? Absolutely. I'm hoping that she will be ugly and drained. She tells me welcome. I tell her I love your son, and I think it probably was the wrong choice. The kitchen and dining room are full of mostly men, maybe 20 guests, boring, rich, eating and drinking slowly and discussing politics on a granular level, speaking for the masses who are too stupid to comprehend what they do on their behalf. I sit with the dogs and marvel at the snack table. A man approaches, asks me how I have come to be at the party. This is his first question. We begin a polite conversation. You join us, and perhaps because I am present, I don't know how much I control these things. Eventually the conversation turns to porn. First the glamour of 70s porn, the production value, then, and it is not me who instigates, chatterbait, cam girls. The poet views these sites as a wild frontier of egalitarian want. But what would sex look like in a utopia? Without power? Would it look like play? You are making me another cocktail, and we are discussing the difference between playing and fucking. You meet my eye. I do not think I imagine it. I would wager a third distinction now. I would raise a third and necessary point. 67. A photo of you in the first room we share in Tamel. You're sitting under a string of your laundry, cross-legged and smiling. I'm proud that my life has let me be the person to take this photo. I fall in love with a soft blanket. I say I would like to give this blanket to my baby if I ever have one. That night I find it wrapped up on my sleeping bag with a little bundle of wildflowers. This past Christmas, why not spend a night together? And I turn on you so violently. I'm too old to be nothing more than an accessory. I'm too old to be used. A fine second. I'm too tired. and your face, which is always smiling across the room, your playfulness with children. 19, almost done. Each of these that feign in isolation, we have already proven work instead toward an irrefutable group effect. I still take my coffee black to impress you. You are in your 20s and I'm 16. You're a construction worker, and of course drink yours without milk or sugar, and I cannot bear for you to see me as a child. I want your body, drinking vodka on your bed, massaging one another until I think it will die from the want. Not here. You take me outside, remove my tampon for me, put it in your pocket. We both smoke even when we fuck, and I have burns on the top of my breast from the ash as you thrust. A. I see a photo of you, A, and it is near enough in time, and I am isolated enough, or maybe just obsessed enough. I wonder often if this is grief or mere obsession, if I'm obsessed with my own grief, as if I were so lucky to make a choice, as if my masochism ran so deep. But still, I can feel the skin of your cheeks. You've shaved, and maybe I am ill, but I can physically feel you, a little soft against the jawbone, dry and worn, stubble still, lips. It is true to say soft lips. I can feel this cheek on my palm, on my own cheek, neck, shoulder. I can feel every piece of your body I was allowed to touch. Your cock inside of me, or in my grip, or against my mouth, just the shaft brushing my lips as I worship. Had I wept beneath you, or what could I have done to be allowed some kind of proximity? No closeness. I vomit thinking about you at odd hours still, just the absence, like being punched and I heave whatever is inside of me. And writing here, remembering again your cheek, I have to leave my desk to stand at my sink and come, just remembering the way it felt in my hand, and I weep as I come, not the howling sobs of despair I'm used to overtaking me, but a long quiet weeping of silent tears running down my face relentlessly. And it is a long orgasm, waves of release, water down my thighs. And writing now, my whole body shakes still, and the tears are on my wrists, and I may have to vomit again. Last year it was your left ear, so I'm improving. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful.
That was great. I always have to change back to gallery after that. Yeah, I'm glad that you're able to read. I know it's really late on the East Coast, but yeah, I'm really excited for that book.
Does it have a release date yet?
Spring? Am I wrong? Maybe not.
Fair enough, fair enough. Very excited, very intrigued. Would definitely read more. Can't wait.
Thank you. I loved your reading.
Oh, thank you.
Next up, we have Christoph. Are you ready? I think I accidentally muted everybody, so.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Still
ready.
Okay, so I would say Christoph is basically like the Jewish Italian Renaissance man. Like he's in a band, like he runs like a publishing company with Lisa, and he's also an author. I have one of his books. I think this is your last. Was this your last one with Mandy?
Yeah, it's the one that bombed.
I liked it because I recognized like a lot of people in it, but it was like a niche of like.
It was fun to write though.
Of people that like horror, and
yeah.
I liked it. So everybody, welcome Christoph. Oh, you're under Lisa. That's why I couldn't find you.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it. All right, my kitchen is very dark, but whatever. I'm gonna read from a YA novel that I'm hoping to put out. You got it. You got this, Christoph. I was just reading the comment. But yeah, it's a YA. It sucks that I got to read after Sam because she wrote very artfully about sex, and this will not be artful about sex. It's about a 17-year-old Italian Jew. Not autofiction, though. I want to say this, not autofiction, who meets this 19-year-old college girl who is court ordered to volunteer at his grandma's nursing home. And they actually go on a date, and he's really into her. So we're at her dorm, and they're watching the Gilmore Girls. I will start reading now. The Gilmore Girls episode ends, and neither of us have made the first move. It's there, though. One of us is going to make that move, but I don't know if it can be me. The screen switches back to the Netflix menu. Another episode will play in 5 seconds. Alexia puts it on pause and stretches out her arms. We hear bass bumping from one of the dorm rooms down the hall. She shakes her head and says, "That so sounds like dubstep. You know I love me some dubstep, but I've been staying away from partying in any form since, you know, the DUI and getting sober and all that." She looks so sad. I know she misses partying, and I just want to make her laugh and say, "Ugh, but dubstep sounds like robot farts." "What?" she says and laughs. "It sounds like Wall-E has the farts." Shut the hell up, Caldo. But it's true. Dubstep is just a lame-ass verse and then a robot farting for the chorus. That's all dubstep is. The drop is just a choir of farts. "Whatever, shut up," she says through laughter and pushes me. But I don't move, and she falls toward me. I hold her body close to mine and look into her eyes. Even though I'm scared and want the kiss to be perfect, my head moves forward and our lips finally meet. Whoa. Oh man. Wow. We keep kissing, finding a rhythm as I follow her tongue. Oh damn, she's following mine now. God damn. This kiss, holy macaroni. This kiss shows me I don't know anything at all about life, but I do know I love Alexia Marcos and I want to be with her in the closest way possible. Instincts I didn't even know I have kick in. I'm touching her in ways I didn't even know I could touch someone. Our clothes are coming off and we're kissing each other's neck, shoulder, and chest. Alexia's bra comes off and my God, I don't know whether to touch or kiss them, but I do both. She touches my chest and rubs lower. Oh shit, I am fucking hard. I feel embarrassed and worried about my boner as she touches it. Please be big enough. Please let her think it's a good size. She doesn't say anything about it, but strokes it enthusiastically. That's good. Oh, okay, that's good. She's still playing with it, so it can't be that bad. She grabs my hand and puts my fingers lower and lower. Oh, damn, this is really happening. I remember to rub on the clit area, clockwork-wise, just like the girls do on Chatterbait. Then I put a finger inside. Damn, she's really wet. Holy shit, she might really be into me. We continue kissing and she strokes faster. I want to go down on her. I want to make her feel at least half as good as she's making me. I pull my fingers away and back up and get a direct look. Whoa. I feel myself somehow getting even harder and start kissing her thighs until my tongue nears between her legs. I start licking, not sure what to do, but Alexia says after a few seconds, "Ooh, a little higher, a little faster. Yeah, just like that." I lick and lick and lick until my jaw feels a little numb and I have to take a break. She pulls my face up and kisses me and says, "I have condoms." Okay, I nod, feeling a little lightheaded, like God himself just patted me on the head for being good. She gets up and she's so naked. I watch her go to her nightstand by the TV. The glare from the Gilmore Girls shows off her curls in the blue glow. It's surreal and super hot. She bends over to get the condoms from her desk drawer. It feels like my penis is about to have an earthquake. Oh God, no. I need to last more than 20 seconds, but I'm on Effexor and it makes it hard for me to finish. So for the first time ever, I'm grateful to be on depression meds. She grabs a condom and brings back a blue Trojan, ribbed for her pleasure. I'll put it on, she says, and comes back to the bed. She unwraps it and uses her mouth to put it on me. Oh my God. Okay. This is happening. This is really, really happening. She lays back down and I get on top of her and look down in her eyes. And I know without a doubt, I'm totally in love with Alexia Marcos in every way that's possible. She puts me inside of her. And for the first time, I truly understand why every bard from Shakespeare to The Weeknd are obsessed with making love. Thank you.
That was great, dude. That was excellent. Very well done.
I hope they don't cut it because YA has all these stupid fucking rules. So they might cut that because I don't know if they're going to show, it might be too graphic, but I'm like, fuck it. I'm keeping it in there.
I don't know because YA is like kind of graphic now. It's like, yeah.
That's a problem for another time, but thanks for letting me read on and this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like how all the bad kids are reading. That's what you said. It's like the bad kid reading sometimes.
Yeah. I love the line about the Effexor in there, man. That was like, Perfect.
Okay. It's already 11, but we got 2 more people. So next up, Greg, are you ready?
Yeah.
So Greg, I think I've known you like longer than like any other writer. So like your last book was like a reprint called In Nightmares We're Alone. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And like you've sort of like disappeared off the internet. So like I saw that you maybe had some stuff in like pre-production. Like what have you been doing lately?
Right. I mean, I have first drafts of 2 different novels that I'm slowly working away at, and then I'm putting together a collection that I hope will come out in the next year or so. Just kind of in the final stages of that. And then I've also got some screenwriting stuff that's slowly moving along that I am not really able to talk too much about publicly, but
Right.
hopefully there'll be a movie coming along.
Multiple NDAs everywhere.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I'm excited to see what you're reading. So everyone, here's Greg.
All right. So this is a short story that may or may not make it into the collection, as I'm still kind of making my final selections on what does and doesn't go in there. And it's pretty fucking stupid.
I'm really excited.
This is called The Pest Nest. Everyone knows everything now. I'm not sure how it happened exactly, but I know some of the factors. The first one is smartphones, being able to look things up all the time and believing whatever you read. The second one is social media, with upvotes and downvotes, keeping score of every conversation that you have. It lends itself to debate, not discussion. Discussion is about learning from each other and finding common ground. Debate is a competitive sport where the first person to learn something loses. At some point, most all of our interaction gave way to lecturing, and the worst sin you could commit was to not already know something, anything. I tried to get in shape one year and made the mistake of saying it online. All of a sudden, every man I know is a personal trainer and every woman is a nutritionist. Eat this, don't eat that, do X workout every X number of days and never do Y. All the advice is contradictory, and most of it's from people who couldn't lift the lid off a shoebox if it was full of onion rings. But they know. They're positive. They know all the secrets of how to lose fat and gain muscle. It's got to piss off real trainers and nutritionists. I know how they feel. Everybody thinks they know about bugs. Just because it's in a bed and it's a bug doesn't make it a bed bug. Let's start with that. If my Christmas bonus just for 1 year was an extra $1 for every customer with fleas in their bed who told me they had bed bugs, I could pay for a 4-year degree. Not that I would. I've seen what college does to people. Seen it way too close for comfort. Here's what happened. One day, this middle-of-the-road university that will remain nameless calls me up and says there are earwigs running around the lecture hall. Plausible story, but right away what they're describing aren't earwigs. Standing in this big open room, this kid, a professor or an aide or whatever he is, he's walking through rows of seats with me saying, they're usually around this area. They're really fast though. Blink and you miss them scurrying past your feet, which already doesn't sound like earwigs. You'd think everybody would know how slow they are, but apparently not people who go to college. He carries on saying, Mary Anderson saw one of them the size of her fist the other day. And either Mary Anderson's full of shit or this guy is, because nobody's seen an earwig that big ever. He says Tyler Morgan had one of them try to get into his ear last week while he was listening to a lecture. Barely noticed it in time. I mean, come on. Even kids know the whole earwig in the ear thing is an urban legend. The whole time I'm going, cut carbs and count macros and veganism isn't healthy because you won't get enough protein. How people talk with no idea about anything. I tell this guy, look, I can spray for earwigs, but this doesn't sound like earwigs. If we can't find even one of them, it's hard for me to say for sure what they are. My guess would be cockroaches from what you're describing. And I have to exterminate differently depending on what I'm exterminating. He goes, no offense, Bill, even though my name isn't Bill. I work for Bill's Pest Control and the logo on my shirt says Bill's. He goes, these are college students. I think they can identify an earwig when they see one. I'd like to ask this guy what kind of a bug program is in the school's curriculum, how many core credits are earwig identification based, and whether the guy teaching the class can tell the difference between a shirt that says Bills and a shirt that says Bill. But really, with guys like this, what's the point? There are people who want to teach and there are people who want to learn. And the sad fact is there's not as much overlap between them as you'd hope. People who like to learn, they're not confident in much of what they know because they know learning is a process and they're still working on it. So they ask a lot of questions, but don't provide a lot of answers, even if they know a lot. People who like to teach, a lot of them have an inferiority complex or something where they think their value is in how much wisdom they impart on others. So they'll tell you any old crap, even if they have no idea about it, because it makes them feel important. They'll even tell you saturated fat causes heart disease. This guy's upset because I, somebody with a job where I need to know about bugs, just tried to teach him a little about bugs. Hard to say anything to a college type without offending them. No wonder even Seinfeld won't play these places anymore. I tell this guy, whatever, I'll spray for earwigs, even though I'm betting it's cockroaches. My paycheck gets docked anytime I spray somewhere that they get another call from in the next 30 days. And I have a hunch that's going to happen, but I'd rather not argue with a guy who loves teaching so much that he wants to teach me about my own damn job. I go out to my van and get the spray, and Mr. Helpful isn't there anymore when I let myself back into the lecture hall. I figure, great, hopefully I can get this done before he comes back. I spray around the usual places, the vents and the windows, anywhere I find crevices. But the truth is, there's really nowhere here that looks like an obvious spot for earwigs, especially earwigs the size of your fist that dart across your feet so fast you can barely see them and want to get into your ears. No place on earth is an obvious spot for those. But even regular earwigs, there's no place they'd really be in this room. No place except something runs across my feet and I jump back. I don't get a look at it, but it's too big and too fast to be an earwig. Not fist-sized, but pinky-sized anyway. Before I can process it, it runs up through a row of chairs to the back of the room where the cabinet is. Earwigs are nocturnal. They like places that are dark and tight and moist. Logs and trees, under outdoor furniture, sinks and bathrooms, wherever they can hide from the light until sundown. That half-rotted cabinet in the back of the room, doors crooked and gapping like a witch's teeth. If there's an earwig in this whole building, it's probably in there. Bill, comes a voice from behind me at the door to the hall. There's the guy again, that professor's aide or whatever he is. And now the professor is standing with him too. He's older and better dressed. Distinguished is probably the word he'd use to describe himself. There's been a mistake, says the aide. There are no bugs in here. I was wrong. I jumped the gun when I hired you. Well, I'm almost done spraying, I tell him. We'll pay you, says the professor. Best to pack up and go, though. We wouldn't want dangerous chemicals around here that we don't have any use for. I'd like to just open up that cabinet, I say. It looks like a good nesting ground. The files in there are confidential, says the aide. I don't want to look at the files. I just want to check if there are insects inside and maybe spray a little if there are signs. You wouldn't find anything. As I said, there are quite positively no insects here. No offense, but it affects my paycheck if you're wrong. 10 minutes ago, you were certain there were earwigs as big as your fist. Now you're certain there's nothing? That's right. I am 100% certain. I'm getting so annoyed with this guy, for some reason I blurt out, where do you come down on grains? Pardon? Grains, eating grains, good for you or bad for you? Everyone knows grains are bad for you, says the aide. No, everyone does not know that. I'm not sure anyone knows that. The world is teeming with misinformation on the subject. Grains are bad for your body, says the professor, just as sure as there are no earwigs in this building. That's not good enough for me. Grains are bad, says a female voice from the hallway. A young woman enters, a backpack slung over one shoulder. Sorry, I overheard. The most common grain in Western culture is wheat, says a young man who enters behind her, and wheat is riddled with gluten. Don't you realize how much of the population is sensitive to gluten? Asks another man. Or do you only think about yourself? Asks another. They keep coming until they fill the floor at the base of the room, one student after another, a crowd speaking in judgmental monotone, saying gluten damages the intestinal lining, saying grains are low in nutrients compared to vegetables, saying it's common knowledge that gluten is associated with schizophrenia. Then one lone voice of dissent, mousy and cautious, comes from the hallway, a young woman who looks horrified by the crowd, but even more horrified by what she perceives as misinformation. She says, "But I did see earwigs in that room. They've been there all year. Also, I thought gluten was only bad if you had celiac disease." "Heretic!" screams the professor. The mob hisses and points. So fast I almost don't see it. Something flies from the professor's sleeve and lands on the young woman's shoulder. It's about the size of a pinky. But before I can get a good look at it, it scurries up her neck and disappears into her ear. And then I did some reading and realized gluten sensitivity is actually much more widespread than I previously realized, she adds. Also, there are no earwigs here. The wheels in my head finally creak to a start. That guy's not an aide. He's a concerned student. He called me because the faculty wasn't responding to student complaints about the bugs. And they weren't responding because, dear God, the cabinet in the back of the room seems to squirm. The doors tremble. Any moment it's going to burst. "Okay," I say, "I'll go. I'll head back to my van and leave." The mob looks to the professor for a response and he smiles a sad smile. "You know too much," he says. "I don't. I promise I don't. I know nothing. I thought gluten was only bad if you had celiac too, only I thought it was called celiacs. I don't even know who I'm voting for yet." They cringe in unison, craning their heads away from me. The professor opens his mouth and a screeching, screaming roar comes out. Pinky-sized earwigs drop from his sleeves and his pant leg and pile at his feet. They burst from the clothes of students around him, out from waistbands and down from skirts, out of backpacks and laptop bags, up from cleavage and out through mouths and noses. The cabinet doors fly open and the earwigs spill out by the thousands. They come at me from both sides, half from the cabinet and half from the students. The professor and his cult come from the stairs toward me, the earwigs clearing space for their feet with each step. I blast in all directions with my spray gun, spinning in circles and unloading at the floor around me, keeping them back. Still, the professor and his students approach, the professor advancing on my protective barrier of poison, reaching out and breaking the circle with a handful of squirming earwig monsters. I stand shaking, sweating. People say sweating like a whore in church, but they ought to say sweating like a blue-collar worker on a college campus. You don't just have an infestation, I tell the professor. You are one. You'll all be like us before long, he tells me. It is our kind, not yours, that this planet's future is comprised of. As he reaches for my ears with that fistful of earwigs in a last-ditch effort to buy time, a desperate Hail Mary pass to short-circuit his college brain, I ask the professor, "Don't you mean of which the future is comprised?" Sure enough, he pulls back. "Pardon? You said it's us that the future is comprised of. You ended your sentence with a preposition. Your grammar is wrong." He recoils, his hand drops to his side. In a fiery rage, he screams, "There's no rule that a sentence can't end in a preposition. That's made up." "Yeah," scream his students. "It's not like he split an infinitive or something." I say, "All grammar is made up. That doesn't mean you get to cherry pick which rules you like." I don't know if I'm right. I'm probably wrong, but I argue with everything I have all the same. I argue like I'm one of them arguing with one of me, arguing like I'd be a bad person if I was wrong about a rule of grammar. Then when I'm out of information, I keep arguing anyway. I argue about anything I can think of. I scream, "Evolution is only a theory." And if global warming is real, why was it so cold yesterday? And socialism looks good on paper, but doesn't work in practice. They keep backing up and hissing, pressing themselves against walls until there's almost a path cleared from me to the window. I run, pulling every trigger I can, not just the one on my spray gun, but the ones on the students. The whole time I'm blasting earwigs, I'm screaming, "The Civil War was fought over multiple factors," screaming, "Marijuana is addictive," screaming, "This Jordan Peterson guy's making some good points." I'm about to dive straight through the window when the professor wraps his hands around my shirt and pulls me in close, an earwig scurrying out of his shirt sleeve and up my shoulder to my neck. "Protein's overrated, motherfucker," I spit in his face. I jerk my body and fall backwards through the window, shattered glass raining down around me as my shoulders hit the grass a story below and knock the wind out of me. I wave my hands over my head, brushing my face, searching for the earwig as I gasp for air. There it is, 10 feet from me in the grass. It seems to make eye contact and runs straight at me. I cover my ears and shut my eyes and hear a thud. When I look again, the earwig has been stomped into the ground by a brand name shoe. There are 2 college students looking down at me, real college students with real concern, not yet assimilated by the evil earwig collective of all-encompassing knowledge. Freshmen, I assume. I grabbed them by the legs, clutching them so tightly I almost knocked them over. When I finally get the air into my lungs to speak, I beg them, "Safe space, please, get me to a safe space." That's the story of the last time I ever set foot on a college campus. Late that night, after I'm off the campus and my shoes are burnt and my clothes are burned and I've showered longer than I've ever showered in my life, I get into bed with my wife, and after all these hours of adrenaline, the adrenaline is finally starting to come down. I'm lying there playing a video game, and she's lying next to me reading her book, and out of nowhere she says, "Do you think we make enough money for me to go back to college?" I say, "Oh God, no, don't do that, honey. You can't go back to college, you can't." She turns off the light and rolls on her side and sighs. She says, "Sometimes I just feel like there's so much I don't know about the world." I tell her, "Sweetheart, that's why I love you." Thank you.
Oh, that was excellent.
Great.
Great.
That was amazing.
Totally reflected my college experience.
Yeah, mine too.
Perfect. God, there's so many great writers on here tonight, man.
I'm so happy that I've liked like every single reading. So
yeah, it's really nice.
No air horns.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. I was really hoping to use it, but
I know you've been like just begging for an opportunity. Just a little air horn.
I mean, if you're gonna go out of your way to buy an air horn, it just sits there.
Yeah, it's just gonna collect dust. I mean, come on.
Hey, Alex, you there?
Yeah.
Are you ready to read?
Let me just, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, so this is our last reading. This is Alex. I actually met him on Steemit, which is like sort of like a Reddit cryptocurrency thing for nerds. We immediately connected with our sort of like strange intersection of like goth and optimistic sci-fi. So here is Alex.
All right, I'm going to be reading to you Vanta Black, which is a short horror story, that's available on my Inkit, and there's also a YouTuber narration of it on my audio horror playlist, which I wish I had a link for that somewhere. Let me just grab that. I don't want to slow everything down. No, please do. No,
I don't think it'll let me spotlight you since you don't have a camera, but it's fine.
Here, I'm going to put that in chat. This is all the audio stuff. Anyway, is audio good? Can you hear me? Is it clear?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Vanta Black. There's a few silver linings in all this. I think the original saying had something to do with clouds. That part is no longer applicable, of course. For example, so much of my life until today was just one long, tedious struggle against entropy, against the slow but steady breakdown of everything that worked so hard to build up, like painstakingly removing individual grains of sand from the bottom half of an hourglass and moving them back up to the top. I'm still going, right? Okay. All that's over now. I suppose poverty and hunger are over as well. For that matter, today is the day that the shining dream of world peace has finally been achieved. I just wish there was somebody to celebrate with. Instead, I'm trapped in this blasted tin can, peering out the little window at a jet black sky, not a single star to be seen. A hyperbaric chamber, I think. I'd only ever heard of these being used for diving before my doctor sent me to spend the night in one. I can't say as I feel much better, though I doubt that's the chamber's fault. There's something about the certain knowledge that you're witnessing the extinction of humanity which ruins your appetite. That and the realization that my last meal will be the meager tray of hospital food that the nurse slid to me through a little double-doored airlock just before it happened. All of a sudden, the sky turned black. Just like that. I was lucky enough to be looking out the window through the little porthole in the side of the chamber at the exact moment, although perhaps lucky isn't the word that I want. It didn't even register at first. I thought maybe I was seeing it wrong. I didn't really understand what was happening as a distant airliner fell out of the sky, nor when the couple walking by the waterfront 100 feet or so from the hospital collapsed, clawing at their faces. Birds also fell, one of them near enough to the window that I could see its eyes bugging out and most of the blood in its body boiling out of its twitching wide open beak. At the same time, there was this violent wind indoors. I felt none of it inside the sealed chamber, pumped up to several times sea level air pressure, but I could see the effects making a mess of the hospital room. Papers swept about as if in a hurricane, which were stacked neatly on the counter a moment prior. The windows bulging outwards and then bursting in a shower of shimmering glass shards. Then the glass of water that the nurse forgot to send in with my meal began to boil away into the vacuum. I think that's when it dawned on me what had happened. Struggle as I might, I can't clearly recall the nurse's face when she barged into the room. I remember her hair, though, whipped about this way and that like a television news reporter covering a record-breaking windstorm. She kept pounding on the wall of the chamber as she collapsed against it. The metallic resonating impacts continued for most of a minute, but grew progressively weaker until there was only silence. Perfect, everlasting silence, possible only in the total absence of air. She's still down there, slumped against the chamber. I feel certain of it. Mercifully, I can't see her through the porthole due to the narrow viewing angle. I don't know what I'm afraid of. It's not like she'll decompose. It's not like that collapsed couple outside or anybody else will ever decompose. Kept perfect forever. Pristine, preserved, vacuum sealed. It still feels like a bad dream. Everything outside is still so colorful. More so than before, if anything, without an atmosphere to scatter the light. But oh, that contrast, that stark, absolute contrast of the green grass against the pitch black starless sky. Hang on. Before the unfiltered sun started turning the grass brown. Or the trees, or the big colorful fiberglass ice cream cone atop the white truck at the far side of the lake, just barely visible from this vantage point. The landscape looks like a paper cutout superimposed against the most intense, pure darkness conceivable. Gone is the soft, gentle gradient between sea level and space. Is there even still an ocean to measure that by? How long will that much water take to boil away? Hundreds of years? Thousands? I don't begin to understand how any of this happened. That's what keeps me from fully accepting it. Every time I lay down to sleep, best I can, in the cramped confines of this meager pocket of trapped air in an airless world, part of me expects to wake up to blue skies, clouds, birds singing, planes soaring overhead. If there was a little television or something, maybe I could find out. But then, who could still be broadcasting? How many like me can possibly be out there, coincidentally sealed inside something airtight for whatever reason, when humanity's final moment arrived? Astronauts, astronauts. There have to be some aboard the space station, right? How I wish I had a radio or something. At this point, with so little life remaining, I'd gladly trade some of those hours to hear another voice, anybody's voice, lying to me, telling me this isn't the end, that somehow things are going to be all right. My phone, too. There's still internet service. I might read the final thoughts of the last generation, immortalized, frozen in silicon, even after all the lights go dark. Wind power is out, obviously. Hydropower is out. Solar still works. I assume nuclear still works. It'll all go dark soon enough, though. I just wish I knew why. It's the senselessness of how the human journey has come to an end that rips at my insides as abruptly and violently as the sky was ripped away. No holy book predicted this that I know of. There was nothing in the way of a warning, no alien invasion, no speech from the president or commandments from the sky to build an ark. One moment the sky was there, and then it just wasn't. I wish I could say it'll all be figured out eventually, but there's nobody left to do that. Was I spared? Am I one of the lucky ones? Somehow I don't feel that way. Nuclear submarines, those ought to be all right for a while. They make their own oxygen from seawater, don't they? They'll starve long before they suffocate. I wish I knew how many were out there on patrol when it happened. For some reason, knowing the exact number of remaining humans would be a comfort. My stomach growls, reminding me that my own lifespan is also measured in food remaining on that tray. Hang on. I nibble at the brownie, last one I'll ever taste. I'm painfully hungry. It's an alien sensation. I never knew what actual desperate hunger was before this. I always just ate the moment I felt the smallest pangs of hunger, and never giving any thought to how bad it can get. My mouth is unbearably dry as well. The moisture in the food is my only source of water. I look longingly out the porthole at the glass on the cabinet, but of course, it's bone dry. I wonder if those astronauts will return to Earth. Where else can they go? Just to roam this abhorrent vacuum Earth in their spacesuits until their oxygen runs out. I begin to wonder how long that would take. The printed labels inside this chamber say it has 72 hours of backup O2 and soda lime for removing the CO2. I'm on day 2 now. I can't see the clock from this angle. I never realized before today how much I relied on the way the sky looks in order to get a feel for what time of day it is. Just before the nurse sealed me in this thing, I remember she mentioned something about a clown. The sort that comes to cheer up terminally ill children. She mentioned something about a large order of balloons for him to hand out. Despite myself, I laughed as I imagined all the balloons bursting at once when it happened, then falling limply to the floor all around his body like a bouquet of wilted flowers. I scanned the city in the distance for any indications of fire from the plane crash, but of course, there couldn't be. If by some miracle the cabin remained intact, everybody on board would be in the same situation I am, having the same grim thoughts about what to do with their dwindling time. I suppose any planes that were taxiing on the tarmac at the airport would be fine, although what awaits the passengers in the coming hours would be worse by far than the comparatively merciful rapid death of anybody caught outside. I carefully savor the last of the peas and corn, which I'd originally planned to scoop into the trash when given this meal yesterday morning. What a difference a black sky makes to your perspective, to your priorities. I then feel the ground shake beneath me, gently at first, but the tremors grow stronger and stronger. Earthquakes? Too rhythmic, surely. Feels like something's getting closer. I cower within my little oasis until the tremors begin to weaken. Soon, everything is once again unnaturally silent and still. There's another chamber across from mine, empty as luck would have it. I catch myself wishing there were someone inside, just someone to look at, to smile at, to cry with, though there's no way that we could talk. Anybody at all, my worst enemy, just so I wouldn't have to face the end alone. More completely alone than I've ever been in my life. I fiddle with the emergency oxygen mask dangling from a hook on the chamber's inner wall. That won't save me, will it? Anything I inhale into my lungs will only make them burst. It's not even the lack of oxygen that's the problem, but the lack of pressure. I know it's not like what happens in space movies, but that doesn't change anything. I wouldn't make it far. There's a toilet at least. I have no idea how it can flush without compromising the higher pressure in here. Just that when I flushed it for the first time after the sky turned black, the bowl did not refill with water. It just makes a gurgling sound. I'm not yet desperate enough to drink out of there anyway, even if I could. As the sun slowly crawls overhead, it eventually reaches just the right spot, then a beam of sunlight shines in through the porthole. I withdraw from it the moment I feel the scalding heat on my arm. There's undoubtedly radiation to contend with as well, though in here I'm well shielded from it. Every possible option that occurs to me is struck down just as quickly. What's the point? What am I hoping is going to happen in the next 48 hours? Rescue? By whom? There's no reasoning with my instincts, though. However I wrestle with my primal urge to stay alive, I cannot subdue it. I wish I could lay in the grass one last time and watch the clouds roll by. My body tenses up with anguish at the thought. Just one more time, feeling the soft blades of grass on my legs, neck, and shoulders, pointing out clouds which resemble dragons, ships, or whales. In a fit, I twist the emergency pressure release. I hear a loud hiss and feel an immediate change in my inner ear as the internal pressure begins dropping at the maximum safe rate. I pace back and forth, tugging at my hair, agonizing over whether this is really what I want to do. I can't just hop back inside if I change my mind. There's enough gas to refill the chamber, but I'd be dead before it got back up to pressure. Hang on. Back up to pressure. What else is there to do, though? What else is left? The sky is black. That's the hard truth of it. The sky is black, and I'm out of options. Even when the pressure reads 1 atmosphere several hours later, I can't open the door. The differential between the inside and outside pins it shut. I scream at it as if that will somehow loosen it up. I throw myself at it, shoulder first, over and over. Each time the door budges slightly and I hear a brief, loud suction sound, halfway between a burp and a hiss. Some air escapes. Oh, that's not right. That's better. Some air escapes during the split second when I run into the door. I redouble my efforts, slamming into the door harder and harder until my shoulder throbs. Doesn't matter. Nothing will ever matter again after this. Finally, the last impact budges the door enough that I can hold it open by about a centimeter. The rest of the air escapes in a powerful gust, tossing my hair like the nurses. My hospital gown at last stops fluttering once the last of the air finishes rushing out. Every inch of exposed skin hurts. I can see my veins bulging beneath my skin and feel growing pressure behind my eyes. I close them and fumble around. My hand brushes up against something soft. It's hair. I open my increasingly bloated, bloodshot eyes. It's the nurse. Her skin is a mess, red and blistered from the sun. There are bloody spots all over her clothing wherever veins have burst beneath it. Not much time. I want to choose how it ends. I knelt and then lifted the stiff body of the nurse in my arms. I then stepped outside through the shattered remains of the window, indifferent to the sharp little bits sticking into the bare soles of my feet. 20 seconds? 15? I knew it was going to be like this. I only felt more and more certain that this is how I wanted it to happen. Once outside, I glanced around and I noticed a van parked just in front of the hospital entrance, which read Salvador's Party Supplies. The driver was slumped over the steering wheel. A man dressed up as a party clown laid in a pitiful Technicolor heap just inside the hospital entrance, surrounded by shredded remains of burst balloons. Even now, I'm still able to smile. Even now. I can feel the strength draining from my sweaty, sunburnt body as I trudge out onto the grassy expanse overlooking the lake. I remember watching the leaves of the nearby tree dancing in the wind on the day I arrived. Motionless now. I lay the nurse down in the grass, then eased myself down next to her. She might have been pretty before. Looks like it. Must have been a caring person, too, if she went into nursing. How I would have liked to say something poetic to her just now. Instead, I took her delicate, sunburnt hand in mine and stared up at the empty, black sky. A single tear escapes and then boils away into the vacuum. That's all.
Bravo.
That was great. Very cheerful note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call my doctor and get a Prozac prescription now. Or maybe Effexor.
Great ending to like a great midnight reading. I was like
Yeah.
meditating with that one up in space.
Yeah. Totally. Floating away.
Yeah, and I think all of his stories are great.
That was great.
They're all under, most of them are on Amazon, but like other places too.
Well,
I'll put the link in chat.
Okay, I can put it on the Twitch chat too. But yeah, that's everyone. I had to cut some things because we ran kind of late, but
Yeah, it's funny. So one of the critiques I took to heart was somebody pointed out to me that none of my stories ever had a happy ending. And I guess that guy lived rent free in my head because I wrote like a spite story just because of him. Like, so one of my stories has a happy ending. I don't even remember which one it is.
the floorboards one, I can't remember.
No, I don't remember. I have a lot now.
Optimism out of spite.
With like the existential fact that we're all alone, and I was like right there with the narrator step by step. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It was meant to sort of follow the 5 stages of grief, where the negotiation was the main character trying to like bargain with the event, like saying, well, who could still be alive? Maybe there's still astronauts, maybe there's still submarines, maybe there's still people in the plane, and arriving at peaceful acceptance by the end of the process.
Yeah, and it was all very logical, and underneath that, it was like filled with emotion. I liked that.
Yeah.
I think everyone's tired. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming. This is like greater.
This was wonderful,
than I was
Autumn.
Yeah, when I thought of like all the writers that I didn't imagine all of you people would say yes and actually show up, so I'm happy. And every reading was great. So yeah, you can hang out for a bit or log off. It seems like Christoph fell asleep. Or...
Can I not be last next time?
Can you what?
Can I not be last next time?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
I think next time I overbooked a little bit just because like I didn't know if everyone would show up, so I might make it like a little bit shorter next time.
I'm just giving you a hard time for fun.
I feel your pain.
For fun.
But for me personally, it was the perfect time. But yeah, I feel your pain.
This was excellent. I thought it was a great first reading and what I hope will be a series, and everybody was great. You guys were all so great, and it was so flattering and wonderful to be invited here. So thank you so much, Autumn, for hosting this. Let's all clap for Autumn. Clap for Autumn, yay!
I never know what to do when people are clapping. Like,
yeah, it's just like clap along.
And my headphones died in the middle of Alex's, and I had to go like.
So did mine. Yeah. I just had to switch my AirPods. I switched from the left to the right, but it died right away.
They only last
like,
about 3 hours, so
yeah. All right.
And I didn't get to use the air horn, so
I know. I'm sorry. You could toot it now.
Air
just for
horns have all
funsies.
kinds of practical everyday uses, though. I'm sure you'll get some use out of that.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
I was laughing because I thought it would be, and I only
that-
did it like a little. I only compressed it like a little bit.
That would have killed somebody. That
Yeah. Jesus.
Like I didn't even. Robert's probably mad at me now.
Use it every time you hear somebody in public ending a sentence with a preposition.
Yeah.
There you
There
go.
you go. Totally.
It's a great,
talking
great
about gluten.
earwig story. Really enjoyed that one.
That was so good.
So you said that might not actually make it into the collection.
Yeah, it probably will. It went over well, but
How much he knew about bugs, and he was like very arrogant about knowing a lot about bugs. Great.
yeah, I mean the collections. It doesn't have that many funny stories in it, so I don't. It's gonna be a weird mixture of like a sample platter of like. It ends on a really fucking depressing note. I know that. the last story of the collection. But I'm still kind of finding like the right mixture to have for overall.
And I think funny stories also do really well in readings too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's good to have just a little comic relief in a super serious, collection. If you're gonna have like all this coming at you, it's good to have the earwig story to break it up and laugh your ass off for a few minutes.
We had so many like dark, intense stories too.
Yeah,
Right.
I knew who I asked to come, so I knew that was going to be the case. But I actually
I promised to bring something depressing as fuck next time.
Yeah, I was not sure what you were going to read at all.
I wasn't either. I actually had two things sitting here. I had that story, and then I had the a really depressing story but it's like an epistolary story. And someone right before me, Alex, I think, was reading something that was also a bunch of letters. I was like, or Sam.
Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, I was reading that story that was a bunch of letters, and I was like, I'm not gonna follow that like a moment later with another story that's a bunch of letters. I'll switch to my funny story. We haven't had a funny one in a while here.
Yeah, Marston left, but I was about to say like his Elon story was great.
Oh, that was so funny.
Yeah, that was great.
I too am about to sneak out, but thank you again, Autumn. It was wonderful. Good night, everyone. So
Good
good
night.
to meet
I
you
think I'm
all.
gonna probably end the stream soon. So I'm surprised there's still people watching.
Oh, wow.
all right, now that it's just us, let's.
Okay. You're like, give me the blackmail that you promised me for doing this. I fulfilled the contract.
I've done your damn reading.
Okay,
Now give me the
gonna turn
money.
how do I turn the stream off? Okay, there we go.
Thank you very much, Greg. That was a fantastic story. I loved it.
Thanks. I'm glad it was such a hit.
Funny stories are always a hit. It is a simple truth I've discovered again and again, because everybody tries to go dark and gritty and grim, and the truth is everybody just likes to laugh.
Right.
I can also tell, like, because like you've done comedy, like in the delivery and everything was like,
Yes.
yeah.
Right. I wish it wasn't late at night in an apartment, so I could have gone a little louder and more animated with some of that stuff. But I was like, I don't want someone banging on my door halfway through my reading.
It was perfect. It really was fantastic.
Yeah, I'd have probably done it a little more high energy if I had a proper house where I could. But yeah, it was fun to do.
Okay.
I'm going to duck out.
Yeah, me too. I'll see you guys.
All right.
Thanks, Autumn.
Yeah.
So long.